the call from Honorable Secretary, Department of Animal Husbandry, Shri Atul Chaturvedi ji, that he will be a bit delayed. So I think anyhow we will start the session in 5 to 7 minutes, and we'll wait for the Secretary to join in between. So I hope I am audible to everyone.
Yeah, it's audible.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So we will start in 5 minutes. Just a little heads up. Thank you. Shall we start? I hope we have all the panelists here.
Yes, please.
So good morning, everyone. Our chief guest for the day, Sri Atul Chaturvedi ji, Secretary, Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying, Government of India. He'll be joining in a bit late because I think he has an emergency call with the ministry. Nitin Puri, Group President and Global Head, FASAR Yes Bank. Mr. Minesh Shah, Executive Director, NDDB. Dr. G.S. Rajoria, President, Indian Dairy Association. Ms. Rhiannon Harris, Deputy Trade Commissioner, South Asia, British High Commission, New Delhi. Delegates from the media, friends, delegates, farmers, business people, a good morning to all of you. It is my privilege and honor to be with you at the CII conference on dairy, genetics, nutrition and livestock management. I'm also delighted to see the presence of Ms. Rhiannon Harris, Deputy Trade Commissioner, South Asia, British High Commission, New Delhi, and look forward to her views on the latest developments and emerging global scenario, which can transform dairy sector in India and make it more robust. Now we have a illustrious set of speakers today who will put forth their views on the subject. So just to set the context, I would like to put in a few words on my own and from my own experience. The dairy sector in the last 20 years in India has emerged as one of the most important sectors in terms of agriculture produce. In fact, we can actually see that the milk production in the country in value terms has surpassed wheat and paddy put together. And realizing the importance of dairy sector, the cabinet ministry, in fact, the central government has actually made a separate ministry for animal husbandry and dairying and fisheries. And I think this is a big step in the right direction. Uh, because a lot of farmers are now dependent, as we all know that 96% of the farmers in India are marginal farmers. And due to low per capita land holding, I think dairy becomes a very, very important part of their livelihood. Now, India is the largest producer of dairy products in the world. But as we can also see that it is one of the most inefficient producers of dairy products. Uh, the reasons may vary from low per capita land holding to lack of farmer awareness and many other things. And during the course of the day, we will actually discuss a lot of these challenges and how nutrition and livestock management and genetics can actually benefit in terms of increasing the productivity. Uh, Lack of grazing grounds, I feel, is a huge and permanent problem for the Indian dairy industry, which I don't think that we will be able to circumvent. This also opens up a lot of opportunities in terms of livestock management, nutrition, feed management, and uh, during the course of the day, we will have deliberations on all these things. One thing that I would like to put forth, that is my personal view, and I think Rajoria Saab will agree on this, that 51% of the milk production in India is buffalo milk. Now, as we say that we might have a lot of challenges in terms of efficiency in milk production, and we might never be be able to achieve the kind of cost structures that the European producers or producers in Asia Pacific might have. But we can also work on our power factors. Now, buffalo milk is one of our major power factors. 51% of the milk produced in the country is buffalo milk. India is the largest exporter of buffalo meat. So I think uh, Globally, a lot of research has gone into um, uh, breeding and upgradation of breeds of cow, but there's a lot to be done on the part of buffalo breeding. So, having the largest population of buffaloes and being dependent on buffalo, largely buffalo milk, I think it is the right time that we initiate high-level research in terms of increasing the breed and gene of our buffaloes. A lot of people might also not know. I mean, there has been a lot of discussion about A2 proteins lately. Buffalo milk is 100% A2 protein, and in terms of nutrition and everything. I mean, I think it is much better than cow milk, and uh, we can develop this as a huge power factor, and we can generate a lot of value addition. In fact, a lot of markets like Middle East and Egypt, they need buffalo milk products. In India also, buffalo milk is preferred. In fact, 70% of the consumption comes from full cream milk, that is 6% plus fat. And during the course of the day, we can also deliberate on how to increase research in these areas. So, since we have a lot of experts on board, and they can put forth their views and enlighten us in how to take all these things forward. So, in this series, I would like to call upon Mr. Nitin Puri, Group President and Global Head, FASAR Yes Bank, uh, for the theme introduction. Nitin ji?
Thank you, Jayji. Am I audible?
Yeah, absolutely, sir.
Thank you. I'm so sorry I'm on a bad network, so I'll only switch on my audio. I'll keep my video off for some time. Once I'm back in a good network, I'll switch on the video as well. Thank you so much, Jayji. And thank you so much to CII, Kuldeep, the entire team at CII. Hello to all the eminent co-panelists. It's a matter of pleasure, honor, privilege indeed to be addressing all of you today. I think this is, as Jayji has very rightly said, the context. It is indeed an inflection point where we've come a long way from where we were maybe 50 or 60 years back. But I think it's only half the way that we've come. And there is another second white revolution that all of us have been waiting for, primarily on account of the numbers having gone up. We are, of course, now the world's largest producer for the last many years. As Jayji very rightly pointed out, our milk production is perhaps the largest in terms of value. It's close to about $85 billion. So it's almost 1/4 of the Indian agriculture, food and agriculture per se in terms of farm value. And to that extent, it is very significant, and a large portion of people depend on dairying as an activity. Dr. Kurian and the entire Operation Flood initiative ushered in India about 50 years ago actually is now bearing fruit. And thanks to the guidance set by the cooperative sector, thanks to the initiative taken by the cooperative sector 5 decades, 6 decades ago, today even the private sector has started engaging with farmers. Till about 20 or 30 years back, you would hardly hear of a private sector dairy company buying milk directly from farmers. And you would hardly hear of private sector dairy companies engaging with farmers for feed, fodder, genetics, breeding, and a host of other animal husbandry support activities. So having come this way and having come to a point where the industry, both the cooperative and the private sector, cooperatives of course were already engaging from day one itself, from the time the cooperative revolution started in India, and to the time today where there are so many dairy companies now also in the private sector. And now all of us are aware of the statistics. Close to about 35 to 40% of the dairy industry is organized. Of course, a lot of it still remains unorganized. I think the inflection point now is this transition from the unorganized space to the organized space is going to be very fast. It took about 60 years for 1/3 of the sector to get organized. I don't think for the next 1/3 of the sector to get organized, it's going to take more than 10 years. We already know so many companies down south, in the west, in the north, in fact, even in East India now, where there are, of course, larger challenges around productivity and outreach to farmers. But even in East India, in states like Odisha, Bengal, we're observing that so many dairy companies in the private sector are now engaging with farmers. And that brings us to the second point, which is we've also been talking about Make in India. We will, of course, have the Honorable Secretary with us now. And in fact, the Honorable Secretary, Chaturvedi Saab, was also, as many of you would know, the architect of the entire Make in India campaign when he used to be with the Ministry of Commerce in his earlier avatar at DPIP. So, Make in India for the world, unfortunately, is not happening the way it should be happening. So, the first point that I was talking about in terms of leveraging the strengths of Farmer Industry Connect with the cooperatives, with the private sector, how do we leverage that for Make in India? Now, the basic problem which the Indian milk industry faces today is the quality of milk, whether it's a bacterial count, somatic cell count, whether it is the contamination, from the time the milking is done to the handling, and even before the time the milking is done, as to how we handle the cattle in terms of all the precautions and norms and food safety considerations which go into the final production of milk. While the cooperative sector has done a fantastic job, I think they are to be credited from where we were nowhere in the 1940s and 50s to where we are today. We've come a very, very long way. But I think there is still half more of the way that we need to cover. And unless we get into production of milk which is fully compliant with the norms that are required for value added products, till the time we get into shelf stable products which can be exported over long distances and have a shelf life of couple of months or weeks, till we do that, we will continue to be dependent only on opportunistic trade when it comes to milk powder exports or small little exports on the dairy front. And today we are a decimal percent. If you look at a 10-year average, and if you calculate India's exports as a ratio of global trade, it is not even a single digit percentage. It's still a petty decimal percentage. So till the milk quality is improved, and of course Jayaji was also referring to the point about efficiency, cost efficiency, wherein there are, of course, some challenges in some pockets of the country where we still need to become a little more competitive. And there are a lot of factors which get into that. Feed fodder, which is almost 75% of the cost, innovations on that are required. We need to do a lot more on breeding, yield improvement, and a lot of work, of course, has been done through the research system, through the industry as well. But till the time we crack this code on how to bring in the right quality of milk from the farm, and then in terms of handling it to the factory, and then onward once it is processed to the export markets, it is going to be difficult for us to actually quote unquote make in India. So that is one area where I feel a lot of work needs to be done. And indeed, the industry, the cooperative sector, the private sector, the government are putting in that time, money, efforts to reach there. And this is all encompassing, right? From having maybe some kind of an institutional mechanism for aggregating the produce, aggregating farmers. Cost of delivery of animal husbandry services is again a very big point, very challenging point. How do you reach farmers who are owning 2, 3 cattle kind of herd size? How do you economically reach out to the last mile and administer your services? A lot of people doing a lot of work now on green fodder, silage. So I think all of these things, we are seeing the initial results of a lot of these efforts, but this will take some more time. But I'm sure in the next 10 years, as I said, the first 1/3 took about 50 years, but the next 1/3 is not going to take more than maybe another 10 years. My third and last and final point is about uh, how do we ensure that the dairy industry is also sustainable. There is a lot of talk now about carbon footprint and lots of statistics, and there are, of course, debates around what is the total footprint and what is the per capita footprint. And we've, of course, been saying that on a per capita basis, we are way below some of the other countries. But I think that's one very important area. It's a technical area, but a very significant area. And in the larger context of sustainability now, I think this is one area where we indeed need to put a lot of work on this, because it's going to strike at the core of the business itself for many of the companies. And the government indeed is also putting in a lot of efforts. Uh, uh, so to conclude, I think this is all I need to say. Of course, let me congratulate Honorable Secretary Saab for the fantastic work that they've done through called the Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Development Fund. I think this is a very good mechanism both for promoting Make in India and for ensuring that we are giving enough catalytic support to the industry to actually make in India. In fact, what I will also request Secretary Saab is, just like this fantastic scheme has been rolled out for the processing industry for the animal husbandry sector, is it possible also to have a similar scheme for the industry to work at the back end? So while there are a lot of schemes already for individual farmers, while there are already a lot of schemes which are there for the cooperative sector, I think for the private industry to engage with farmers, there is pretty little that is there on ground in terms of a structured scheme. So this is something which I will request Honorable Secretary Saab, if there is some thought process on this, if there is some budgetary allocation which can be done for this, may not be as part of this particular scheme already, but in the future, this is something that we very keenly look forward to. And this indeed will usher in, as I said, the second phase of the white revolution or Operation Flood, as we would like to call it. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. And I will, of course, catch up with all of you in another 45 minutes during our panel discussion. Thank you so much, Jayji. Over to you.
Thank you, Shinji. I think a lot of valid points made here, and about the Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Development Fund. Definitely, it's a big step in the times of the pandemic, and the way the administration is trying to get the whole private sector on board as a stakeholder in this regard is commendable, because this was one thing that had been missing in the policies of the past. I just would like to make a point here that CII is organizing a CII Agro and Food Tech from 16th to 22nd October 2020. Now it's the 14th edition of Agrotech India, and it has been rechristened as Agro and Food Tech, and being organized on CII's virtual platform Hive. It's HIVE Hive. This will be the largest ever virtual event on agri and food technology. So we have a session on dairy and milk production there as well. And it also will include a lot of experts from the dairy industry. So I would like to inform you all and would like to request you to join in and do look out for this event. Now I would like to invite Shri Minesh Shah, Executive Director, NDDB, to deliver his address. Minesh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jay. Shri Atul Chaturvedi ji, Secretary AHB, Dr. D.S. Rajoria, Mr. Jay Agrawal, Ms. Raina Harris, and Shri Nitin Puri from Yes Bank. I think first of all, let me congratulate CII for arranging this virtual conference on dairy genetics, nutrition, and livestock management. It's a matter of great pleasure for me to be part of this virtual conference on this very important topic, which is increasing milk productivity through innovations and investments in nutrition, breeding, and healthcare management. I think, as all the speakers earlier also told, we all know that India is the largest milk producer in the world, and dairying is an important source of income in our country, and also the means of employment for a large number of people in rural India, which is different from the developed countries how dairying is being done. If we see the figure of milk production in India, I think we grew around 4% CAGR between 1981 and 2011 in those 2 decades. However, if we see last 6-7 years, our CAGR growth has been about 6.4%, which is very healthy if you compare with the world's growth of around 2%. The value of output, as Mr. Jay also told, that rupees more than 7 lakh crore is higher than not only combined value of paddy and wheat, but now paddy, wheat, and sugarcane, all these together, and it's the single largest agriculture commodity. So dairying is undoubtedly a growth story, and it can further propel the growth of rural India if sustainable interventions are designed around dairying. And to make dairying profitable, I think productivity of milch animals, which was highlighted by both the speakers earlier, is need to be increased in our country. As we all know, the National Dairy Plan, which was a central sector scheme promoted by Government of India, and it was implemented by NDDB. It is just concluded now, and it started conceptualizing from 2011-12. had a major objective to help increase productivity of milk animals through scientific approach to breeding, nutrition, and thereby increase the milk production to meet the rapidly growing demand of milk in our country. Enhancement of policy, the productivity requires better feeding and also better management of our animals. However, the milk production cannot increase only by the animal's genetic potential. So therefore, improving genetic potential of milk for the future generation of animals by using animals with high genetic potential of milk production as parents becomes a very key component of any productivity enhancement program. So, and if you compare it with the natural service, when the breedable animals are bred through artificial insemination, it becomes possible to use semen of few top bulls of high genetic merit bull in a more extensive manner over a much higher population. Therefore, AI is a proven tool which was employed for genetic progress during implementation of Operation Flood, or we say the first phase of white revaluation. However, the coverage of AI in our country is very low. And when we planned for National Dairy Plan, it was around 20% coverage, and it was required to accelerate this genetic progress so that the proportion of milk animals which are being bred through AI can be enhanced significantly. And the same thing is now being continued under the National AI program, which is launched by the Government of India. So increasing the availability of disease-free semen doses is critical aspect for accelerating the genetic progress. So that is the point which I want to highlight. And under National Dairy Plan, around 50 million semen doses were being produced when we initiated NDP-1, and we required it to increase up to a level of 100 million semen doses if we have to increase the AI coverage in a period of about 7 to 8 years. And at the same time, we had the challenges in the semen stations. Poor infrastructure in the semen stations, no biosecurity at all, a limited processing capacity of this cementation, both in terms of the number of hygienic bulls and the housing bulls in these premises. There were no SOPs, in these semen stations. So all these were generating very high risk of spreading disease through the semen which was produced. So we decided that under the National Dairy Plan, let us strengthen these semen stations and make them A and B graded semen stations, and they can contribute, very large amount of semen production which is required in our country. So apart from this, thrust on AI, we also wanted that the availability of high genetic merit bulls in our country has to increase. So along with the production of semen, we started a program on progeny testing and progeny selection program for the indigenous breeds. And we also imported some exotic breed, pure breed of HF and Jersey. And all these get together, along with the import of embryos for this exotic breed, contributed about 2,500 high genetically married bulls, and they were made available to the semen stations. I think we are happy to see that the infrastructure for performance recording, production of these high genetic married bulls and a system for genetic evaluation has been created in our country now, and it is ensuring the availability of HGM bulls going forward. For genetic improvement of animals, performance of the number of animals needs to be collected with precision. You will have to with correct identity. So parent identification and other testing. And in a country of ours, identification of individual animals and collection of their performance data, is a Herculean task. So NDDB developed a network, information network on animal protection and health, which is known as INAP and now very popularly known as Pashu Aadhar. We developed to accomplish this task. INAP is now, as we all know, is a national database on animal productivity and the ambitious program of Government of India on the vaccination program of NADCP. now, and also the AI program on NAIP. They are all recordings are now done or made under the INAF. So all the veterinarians involved or AI technicians or milk recorders who are working in villages, they use their mobile phones or the tablets which is available to record these details regarding all the treatments being given, vaccination carried out, AI performed, what is their milk production. So, and this is all being done right in the villages, and data flows from villages to the central servers through the internet. It's both online and offline mode, considering the challenges we have in the internet connectivity. So, having made this progress in under the National Dairy Plan, all the PT and PS programs which were initiated under the National Dairy Plan, they are now being continued under the Rashtriya Gokul Mission scheme of Government of India, and we have a target of every year we have a target of producing around 1,000 high genetic merit bulls, which will be supplied to our cement stations. The another area which was a challenge, along with improving the coverage of AI, was the lower conception rate. We all know that a farmer need to do AI for 2 times or 3 times to get the conception. It was very poorly done. Maybe the quality of semen and the service being provided by the AI technician, they were not following the SOP. So under NDP, we also started a doorstep AI delivery model. So you go to the doorstep of farmer, provide the AI service following the SOPs, and it had a significant impact on the conception rate. So all these SOPs now are the part of the new National AI program, which is being continued by the Government of India. The another area for, I think, improving the productivity of animal is the DNA technology in terms of genomic selection. It has changed the way how the bulls are now selected in the developed dairy nations. So it was required that our country also start working on the genomic selection programs for accelerating the genetic progress of our dairy animals. And NDDB has now developed custom genotype chips. In this chip, it is known as it is for the cattle breeds. And for the first time in the world, we have developed even the buffalo chip for the buffalo breeds, because nobody had worked earlier on the buffaloes. So we have now around 15,000 samples of cattle already genotyped under the industry for the cattle, and around 4,000 buffalo samples for the buff chip. We have completed the performance recording, and we hope that this development will help us in selecting the bulls at an early age, saving a lot of time for the genomic progress in our country. Another area which is important is the embryo transfer technology. As we all know, it is very useful in multiplication of elite cows and buffaloes which we have in our country. And I'm happy to inform that NDDB has set up open pickup from live animal and developing embryos in laboratory. It's in vitro embryo production we have already initiated. We have standardized the SOPs. Our scientists are now well versed, and we are multiplying now by elite cows and buffaloes of our indigenous breeds. Even under the Rashtriya Gokul mission, because this is an important component of the program, NDDB has started training the veterinarians for the embryo transfer technology. We call them and we provide training for the embryo transfer technology. So all these genetic gains, opted now, unless you have a interventions which are supporting with respect to nutrition of dairy animal, all the genetic progress which we have achieved will not be to its true potential. So scientific feeding of dairy animals at different stages of life, is required to produce milk, which is in tandem with the genetic potential of the animal. So we initiated a program on ration balancing. It's a popular scheme now. It is a service provided by the trained local resource person, and it provides the balanced ration advisory services to the milk producer on the basis of the animal profile, their milk profile, and the available feed resources which are there with the farmer. And by adopting this program, the farmer is able to save about 25 rupees per animal per day because his feeding costs are going down and the milk yield or the fat component in the milk is increasing. RDP has also helped them in reducing the, or increasing the lactation length. By our, data, analyzing the data, we have realized that the lactation period has increased by about 26 days for the cows and by about 50 days for the buffaloes. And besides all these advantages in terms of increasing productivity and the total amount which the farmer is getting, it has also resulted in about 13.7% reduction in the enteric methane emission per kg of food. So this is a very significant factor. If we are able to balance the ration for our animals, I think the carbon footprint which Mr. Nitin Puri was talking about, because of high animal population in our country, we can even take care of this problem. The another area I think is the green fodder availability. It is one of the cheapest source of nutrients that can be utilized for reducing the or optimizing the feeding cost, while simultaneously contributing to increased milk productivity. However, if we see bearing few tracks in our country, the round-the-year availability of green fodder is a major challenge. So to address this issue, NDDB implemented fodder development programs, and it helped in increasing the fodder seed production and sale. So make the truthfully certified fodder seeds available to the farmers so that they are able to grow fodder, as well as we help them to in preparing the silage. We started making demonstrations through various cooperatives in our country, and now farmers are able to make the silage at a much larger level. We also worked on, considering the problem of crop residues and the pollution it creates when the farmers are burning these residues. We also use these crop residues for considering as a ration of dairy animals in India. And we have set up two plants, crop residue based enrichment and densification plant of 50 tons per day capacity at Kolhapur and Ganganagar Milk Union, where the surplus crop residues are produced, from the farmer, and they are incorporated in suitable proportion to make enriched food. So, it's for the various categories of dairy animals, and this helps in both ways. It helps to produce the ration for the animal and also takes care of the crop residue and the environment problems. So these are the two areas, I think, breeding and the nutrition. The another area which is important is is ensuring animal health care of our the dairy animals. And in this context, I would say that our aim should be to provide cost-effective, efficacious, easily implementable, and sustainable solutions for economically relevant dairy animal diseases. For example, mastitis, we all know, is the infection of the udder, and it has been the nemesis for many of our dairy farmers due to production losses, either by way of milk discard or drastic reduction in the milk production. So this disease can exist in either in subclinical or clinical or chronic form. So detection and control of subclinical mastitis is tantamount to nipping the disease in the bud. So we adopted a novel approach by putting in place a two-tier milk testing protocol in order to identify this subclinical mastitis infected animals and providing a simple, efficacious, and very cost-effective solution. It's a 10-day oral supplementation which can be mixed either with feed or water, and cost of testing and this oral supplementation for 10 days is only 30 rupees. Another area where we are working now, as we know, antimicrobial resistance has become a very, a major concern due to indiscriminate use of antibiotics in our country for treating the animals. So Ayurvedic veterinary medicine, or as we say, Pashu Ayurveda, is extensively used, from ages in India to manage these ailments in livestock. So these formulations are mostly prepared from, homely made available some of the trees and plants, and they offer an economic and sustainable solution. So NDDB got excellent results, started treating mastitis with this ABM or the Pasu Ayurveda, and we promoted its use in also the other 20 common ailments which seriously affect the productivity of milk animals. Another area is, I think, the IBR. When we initiated the bull production program, HGM bull production program in NDT1, we faced this major challenge. About 30 to 40% high genetic married bulls which we produced and made available had the IBR issue. So we started working on mitigating this IBR problem by indigenizing the development of inactivated IBR marker vaccine. And now we are in advanced stage for using in the field conditions, and we will be able to maintain our semen stations which are IBR free. So,
yeah, I would like to for a minute. One or two of our panelists might have to leave early, so I just would like to request you to shorten.
I will take half a minute.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I think in today's times, digital platform is required for the farmers, for managing the livestock, and also for buying and selling the germplasm and availability of quality breeding services. So Government of India again has developed an eQuala app and ePashuvat, and I am happy that it is going to be launched very shortly. Finally, I will only say that in terms of overall benefits, NDT and the other similar interventions which are being done by Government of India and NDT has promoted a scientific approach and systematic processes which will put India on a path of improved genetics of milk-producing animals in a consistent and manner. I'm sure that in today's deliberations, which involves key stakeholders of the dairy sector, it will further strategize our policies for the country to take these initiatives forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for the detailed description of the initiatives being taken up by the NDDB. In fact, NDDB is the most important body and has done this very successfully. In fact, the latest vaccination drive across the country is reaping rich dividends. In fact, we in the private sector can also feel the difference here. I would like to now invite Ms. Rhiannon Harris, Deputy Trade Commissioner, South Asia, British High Commission, New Delhi, to kindly deliver her address.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And firstly, let me thank the Confederation of Indian Industry for organising this conference on a very important topic. I'm delighted that the UK is a partner country, and it's an honour to participate in this panel alongside distinguished speakers, Secretary Chaturvedi, Mr. Puri, Mr. Shah, and Dr. Rajoria. As Deputy Trade Commissioner for South Asia, I'm responsible for the UK's trade and investment relationship with India and the wider South Asia region. As part of my role, at least in the times before COVID, I've been fortunate to have had the opportunity to travel extensively in India, including to its rural heartlands. I've seen firsthand the importance of agriculture, together with its allied sectors, in providing livelihoods in the country. We can build the best cities with the smartest planning, but imagine a situation where we do not have enough food to feed the people living in those cities. At current consumption levels, 60% more food will need to be produced globally by 2050. And in the next 20 years, the global food system will face challenges that are unprecedented in the history of agriculture. In a world where climate change, with rising temperatures and unusual flood cycles, is affecting crop cycles and arable land, the importance of innovation in agriculture and livestock management is key to creating future-proof, sustainable supply chains for food security around the world, but also for the livelihoods of those that work the hardest in the rural economy. That is also why Prime Minister Modi has put modernisation of agriculture at the top of his agenda, setting a target to double farmers' incomes by 2022, supporting both farmers in the present and future generations working in the agricultural sector. With world-leading agricultural technology and innovation, the UK stands ready to support India to help meet these ambitions. And we're not starting from scratch. Our partnership is already alive from the soil to the stars. In July, Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal and the UK's Secretary of State for International Trade, Elizabeth Truss, met for the 14th meeting of the UK-India Joint Economic and Trade Committee. At this meeting, ministers celebrated the strength of our partnership, particularly the importance of close collaboration in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And they agreed that we should deliver an enhanced trade partnership as part of a roadmap that could lead to a potential future free trade agreement. We're also pleased to announce the permanent registration of polyhalite in India, a multi-nutrient fertiliser mined in the UK, which will help Indian farmers to increase crop yields while supporting a greener and more sustainable environment. And under the auspices of the UK-India Memorandum of Understanding for cooperation in the fields of animal husbandry, dairying and fisheries, the first annual meeting of officials from the UK's Department for Environment and Rural Affairs and India's Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying took place earlier this year in Delhi. The joint working group reaffirmed its commitment to address market access barriers and support enhanced trade. UK-India bilateral trade in the agri-tech sector, including food and drink, was approximately £700 million in the financial year 2019-20. The trade between our two countries ranges from frozen prawns and salmon, oats, cheese, to animal genetics, animal feed and dairy machinery. I am pleased to say that earlier this year, a shipment of 260 British pedigree pigs from JSR Genetics, one of the UK's largest pig genetics and pig farming specialists, reached India to support an advanced breeding programme focused on the northeastern states and Punjab. We hope this is just the start of the support the UK's progressive farmers and technology companies can provide to India's animal breeding objectives. In addition, Genus plc, a UK company, is the world's leading provider of bovine genetics and reproduction services and has been operating in India since 2010. In 2017, Genus established a state-of-the-art dairy genetics facility near Pune in Maharashtra. The facility is dedicated to the Indian dairy cattle and buffalo population, which in turn will improve the country's milk production and the livelihoods of millions of dairy farmers in India. This brings me to the importance of the dairy sector in India. And I do not need to tell you that dairy products are a way of life here. It's almost impossible for me to pick my personal favourite, but I would probably have to pick out tandoori paneer if really pressed. India is the world's largest milk producer and consumer of dairy products, consuming almost 100% of its own milk production, with a unique pattern of production, processing and marketing. What lies behind this is that dairying has become an important secondary source of income for millions of rural families and has assumed the most important role in providing employment and income generating opportunities, particularly for marginal and women farmers. We know that some of the challenges the largely unorganised sector faces range from shortage of quality feed to the need for investment in dairy processing, advanced breeding systems, veterinary health centres and marketing and price training. The UK is well placed to help with the long-term solutions for some of those challenges. Dairy farming is the largest agricultural sector in the UK. Over 29% of dairy farmers use renewable energy, with waste to landfill volumes decreasing by 73% since 2006. The UK is steeped in a culture of global excellence in livestock research. It is home to 8 UK veterinary schools located in Scotland and England and centres of research and development excellence. These centres include the Morden Research Institute, renowned for its work on livestock vaccines, Harper Adams, which is a leading food and agricultural university with their own dairy unit, Rees Heath College, which offers training across the entire dairy supply chain, and the Pirbright Institute, which is the World Organization for Animal Health reference laboratory for foot and mouth disease. Applying this research and innovation in practice, there are many businesses at the cutting edge of technology for the dairy sector. Fullwood are market leaders in the supply and innovation of milking parlour installation. Cogent and Genus are the suppliers of world-class dairy genetics. NMR provide tools for monitoring production, health and fertility of your dairy herd, while companies such as Thompson's and Ampario provide advanced solutions for livestock nutrition and feed additives. To conclude, all available research indicates that good animal husbandry, not the farming system nor the scale of operation, determines animal health and welfare, and these are key for efficient as well as ethical production. The future looks bright for UK-India industry and academic collaboration in this sector. If you would like to learn more, please do get in touch with DIT's trade advisors who are based across India, including in our Deputy High Commission in Chandigarh. You will also hear more later from the real UK experts in the dairy and animal genetics sector. Dr. Jean Margerison, University of Nottingham, Mr. Jonathan Statham, Chief Executive, Raft Solutions UK, and Dr. Arvind Gautam, Managing Director, Genus ABS India. They'll be sharing their experience on how technologies can play a pivotal role. I look forward to hearing Secretary Chaturvedi's remarks and to our continued collaboration with the Government of India and the Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying. Thank you very much and have a wonderful conference.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. I would like to welcome Shri Atul Chaturvedi ji, Secretary, Department of Animal Husbandry, Dairy, Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairy, Government of India. It's an absolute honor to have you here, sir, on board as a panelist and our chief guest for the day. So before going ahead with the meeting, I would like to ask the chief guest to release the report of opportunities in dairy and livestock nutrition, genetics, and healthcare management. Please. Edwin, can we have the report published? Nitinji, would you like to a small word on this report?
Sure, Jayaji. Thank you so much. Honorable Secretary, sir, good morning to you. And once again, wishes to everybody. This is primarily, as we were talking, as I was mentioning in the earlier part of my remarks in the beginning, this is primarily an effort to highlight what is happening in the dairy, livestock, nutrition, genetics, and animal husbandry space. What are some of the initiatives being done by the cooperative sector and the private sector? And as we said in the very beginning, it is critical that we tackle the dairy value chain at the back end. While there is a lot of good work being done on the front end in terms of processing, infrastructure, support, interest subvention, and other mechanisms under the Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is indeed a fantastic, great amount of work being done by Secretary Saab and his entire team, which we highlighted in great detail when I spoke at the beginning. But that's 50% of the story. The remaining 50%, of course, is the great work being done again by the ministry and the cooperative sector at the back end. And now that the private sector is also increasingly engaging with farmers in their own enlightened self-interest to secure the right quantity and quality of supplies, both from the export Make in India perspective that we were talking of, as well as from the food safety perspective that we were mentioning. I think it becomes very critical to have these interventions dovetailed into the operations and day-to-day business activities of dairy companies in both the cooperative and private sector. And if there are mechanisms wherein a lot of work that was happening under the National Dairy Plan and so many other initiatives which Secretary Saab has been leading, if a lot of that can also be dovetailed with what the private industry does as well, I think that's going to create some kind of revolution. And as I said in the beginning, it took us about 60 years to organize 1/3 of the Indian dairy industry. It should not take us more than 10 years to organize the next 1/3. I think that's a target that we need to achieve. And that is eventually going to benefit farmers in the process. And as you all know, dairy industry is one of those rare industries. Dairy industry in India, rather, is one of those rare industries where almost 75% of the consumer wallet actually goes to the farmer. So this is unprecedented. It doesn't happen in any other part of the world, in any other value chain. So I think if we focus on this back-end work on the breeding side, genetic side, nutrition side, feed fodder management, silage, a lot of this good work, if it is done in partnership between the industry, government, and farmers, this is indeed going to bring about a second white revolution in India. Thank you so much. Jayji, over to you.
Thank you, Nitinji. I got to see this report, and it's quite exhaustive and has been made in a very, very friendly way. In fact, I mean, people like me can understand very well on what all it is, despite not being from a technical background. So I would like to invite Dr. D.S. Rajoria, President of Indian Dairy Association, to kindly deliver his address. I would also like to request Dr. Rajoria to please on his time on this part, because we are already running late. Thank you, sir. Dr. Rajoria, please. Admin, do we have Dr. Rajoria online? Sudeep?
Dr. Rajoria, we request you to join the session, please. I hope I'm audible. Dr. Rajoria, can you please come in? The panelists and the delegates are waiting for you to start.
I think Dr. Rajoria.
I'd request the conference chair to please invite our chief guest. I think we'll move on to the chief guest for the moment.
Yeah, thank you. So I would like to now invite Mr. Atul Chaturvedi, Secretary, Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry, Dairying, Government of India, to kindly deliver his address. And I would like to, sir, at onset, I mean, I'd like to congratulate you on the Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Development Fund, and also on the extensive vaccination program that is being run across the country. I mean, in this part of the country, we can actually feel the difference due to this vaccination in this season. It has made a huge impact. Sir, on to you, sir.
So, thank you, Jay, and good morning to ladies and gentlemen. The distinguished panelist, my friend Rhiannon Harris from the British High Commission, Dr. Rajoria, Mr. Minesha, and Mr. Puri. I would also like to congratulate Yes Bank for coming out with this very relevant report at just the right opportune time for highlighting the issues related to genetics, nutrition, and health. However, as far as the whole livestock and dairy sector is concerned, as most of you know about it, that the dairy subsector has been growing at almost 7 to 8%, and it's contributing almost 4% of the total economy of our country, and it is the largest single agriculture commodity in terms of value of the production. Moreover, almost around 70 million plus farmers are involved directly in dairying, and another 10 million people plus are employed directly and indirectly in the dairy sector as far as processing and value addition and marketing infrastructure is concerned. The other very important aspect is that almost 60 to 70% of the final market value of the produce as far as dairy sector is concerned goes back to the farmer. So that's a kind of a share which is a very unique model which is there in this country compared to the rest of the world. So that being the highlight. Moving on to the topic of discussion today, I would like to highlight a few area with reference to the improvement over the last 5 years as far as the whole dairy sector is concerned, and few statistics in that regard. So first of all, the total milk production has increased by almost 30.7% in the last 5 years as compared to the period prior to that. And per capita availability is showing growth of almost 28% plus. India's milk production is growing several fold compared to world's milk production, and in fact, during last 5 years, even average productivity of cattle and buffalo has increased by almost 13%, which is the highest growth rate in the world. Though we are at the bottom, but we are growing very fast. So we hope to catch up with the rest of the world as far as the productivity issues are concerned. And role of livestock, particularly dairy in social and economic upliftment of the milk producers is well known, and integrated farming with dairy as almost as the ATM machine, while agriculture is the intermittent return to the investment, is a well-known strength of the dairy and the livestock sector. In fact, there was a study which was undertaken by an organization called Manage in Hyderabad, which surveyed over a large number of area regarding the farmers who are engaged in livestock activities in addition to the crop cultivation, and found that very rarely such farmers who are engaged in livestock activity in addition to the crop cultivation actually resorted to suicide as far as the incidence of deaths were concerned in the farmer, while the major or the majority numbers of the farmers who resorted to suicide were primarily the only crop cultivators rather than a mix of crop and the livestock sector. So that shows the strength of this particular sector and how we need to go along as far as the whole aspect of the livestock and dairy sector growth is concerned. Getting on to the subject of dairy genetics, first of all, the most important aspect, whether it is in terms of the productivity increase or breed improvement part is concerned, which contributes to, as per our estimate, almost 60 to 70% of the productivity gain through the breed improvement. We are trying to work in several directions as far as this breed improvement work is concerned. And I'm sure the speakers before me must have highlighted most of those points, but even if we have to repeat, but we have to somehow tell this again and again so that the right kind of awareness and extension activities happen in the field and in the industry participants who are there today. So as far as the breed improvements, some of the real game-changing technology interventions are happening as of now. One of the big game-changing technology which is coming in the area of cattle and buffalo is the technology of the in vitro fertilization, the IVF technology, which is commonly known as the test tube baby in the human part of the genetic improvement or breed improvement. So, that part is something which is really now going to drive the breed improvement work in a fast track mode, because what we could get through the conventional progeny testing and pedigree selection method as the desired productivity of a particular breed is now going to be happening at a much faster speed, which I will say, as per the present available technology in the country is concerned, it is almost going to increase by 20 to 30x, and plus this area can further be fast tracked, which was earlier taking 21 years is now going to be taking 3 years. So 7 generation work is happening in 1 year, one generation. And even in that one generation, if you combine it with the genomic chip technology, so the breed value of a particular cattle and buffalo, which required almost 6 to 7 years of the work, now can be ascertained in 15 days of time from the birth of the calf. So with all these technology and combining it again with the sex sorted semen, which ensures almost 90% plus female calf production through the artificial insemination activity. So these three technology combined is going to change the whole canvas as far as the breed improvement work in our country is concerned. And let me tell you that there are a number of expert organizations of both in country and from outside this country who have come in and are working very intensively in the field for the area of the dairy genetics and the breed improvement work as far as the breed improvement of cattle and buffalo is concerned. So that's one area which is really gaining an eyeball as far as the whole development in the dairy sector is concerned. The other area, which is the nutrition part of the area, which I normally call it as almost 30 to 40% productivity gain if we can have the right kind of affordable quality feed and fodder. This is again a very low-hanging fruit, and we are trying to address it through two folds. One is undertaking the right kind of research to produce improved variety of various feed and fodder, which is providing all kinds of nutrition, whether it is protein or carbohydrates or any other nutrition which is required for increasing the productivity of dairy sector. One is the research side. The other is the 24/7 by 365 days availability of the green fodder. And we are working on a scheme where we are trying to unleash in a hub and spoke model a number of rural fodder entrepreneurs across the country in every block. And there are a number of indigenous machines which have come in, which are much less costly than compared to the bale making machines or silage making machines which we were importing from outside, which was almost costing 100,000 rupees and more. So therefore, here is an option of getting these low-cost machines being made available to the entrepreneurs with some sort of a subsidy coming in from the government, and rest of it is coming either through the resources of the entrepreneur themselves or through the bank loan, etc. And these entrepreneurs in turn have an area of operation for procuring the green fodder, and also motivating the farmers to understand that green fodder or a fodder cultivation can also be a cash crop as far as the growing of that particular option is concerned. And once the farmer realizes that this is a good option for them and getting them good money, these green fodders are procured by these entrepreneurs, converted into silage and bales, and thereafter made available to the area of operation of the particular entrepreneur is concerned. So hub and spoke model in terms of procurement, growing, and this model can really run very fast in terms of various cooperative unions and cooperative societies across the country wherever they are active, or even in the farmer producers organizations and things like that. So, this is another area of intervention which will drive the whole nutrition program, because at the end of it, if we have to make the cost of production in dairy sector competitive, because right now the cost of production is pretty high compared to the rest of the world, and therefore we can't compete with the rest of the world in terms of export of the dairy products. And if we have to make the cost competitive and reduce the cost of production, we have to address the issues related to feed and fodder, because that contributes to almost 60 to 70% of the cost of production. And if we can address that, we will not only reduce the cost of production, but also increase the profit margins for farmers. And once the profit margins for farmer increase, they will get motivated to invest more and more in the area of breed improvement and feed and fodder availability of the right kind to provide the right kind of a nutrition and better livestock management as far as this whole area is concerned. So, so the nutrition part is addressed through this. Now, third aspect is the livestock health. Livestock health, as you know, this government has envisaged and has launched a very big program of national animal disease control, where we are proposing to make our country FMD free in next 5 years' time, and also control another deadly disease called brucellosis in the cattle and buffalo. And this is a program which is one of the biggest ever vaccination program taken by any country of the world, whether it's in the case of human being or animal, because here we are going to be vaccinating almost around 530 million odd animals twice a year. So almost like 1,060 to 1,070 million doses of vaccine to be administered in 1 year's time, and not only 1 year, but it goes on every year thereafter. So this is the kind of quantum and the size of the vaccination program, and this is at the 100% assistance of the central government. So it is being made available free of cost at the doorstep of the farmer, which is going to be a huge contribution in terms of saving the losses which these farmers were incurring due to the disease of FMD and brucellosis, which have no cure. It is only prevention which can prevent occurrence of such diseases in the cattle and buffalo, and thus increase their productivity and the profit margin. So that's one area. The other area is the doorstep delivery of veterinary services, which we are working very intensively through the mobile veterinary dispensaries and things like that. The other area, in view of the COVID days and the seriousness of the problem of the zoonotic diseases and the diseases spread through the animal to human being, we are also working on a One Health mission along with Health Ministry and other stakeholders, in which we are trying to strengthen the infrastructure related to disease surveillance and disease diagnostic, which is very important in terms of the livestock, because if we can prevent the root cause of occurrence of such diseases in the human being, which is through the livestock health and diagnosis and the treatment of the livestock, we can ensure one healthy world with reference to both human being and animal across the world. So One Health mission is another very ambitious program which we are embarking upon, and we are partnering with World Bank and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and others to also bring in the best international practices as far as this One Health mission approach is concerned. So this is another area of basically intervention which we are trying to look at in terms of this. Now, combining all this, once we have all these interventions going on in the field, obviously it will result into much more production of milk and milk products. And how do we address that part is a big challenge for us. And therefore, under the Atmanirbhar Bharat incentive package, which was announced by the government under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, we have also launched this Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Development Fund, which is basically to incentivize setting up of processing and value addition infrastructure in the dairy sector, along with other livestock products. And this particular initiative, for the first time, is trying to incentivize the investments made by the private sector in this in the dairy and livestock sector and livestock producers. And this will drive the increased offtake of the organized processing and value addition infrastructure, which is presently roughly around 23 to 24% of the total milk produced. And once we have this infrastructure in place and increased organized offtake, which we are targeting to cover almost 40 to 50% of the total milk produced in the country, we will not only have better quality product for the consumers, but will also be ensuring demand predictability and assured prices to the farmer. And once we assure the products of the farmers to be purchased or procured by such organized infrastructure, which is very intermittent or not very reliable in terms of the unorganized procurement as far as the processing and value addition is concerned. If we can ensure demand predictability and assured prices of farmer will also get motivated to invest more and more on the breed improvement, and would also result into increase in profit margins of the farmer. So it's a win-win of everyone, whether it is the farmer, whether it is the consumer, or whether it is the investor who's going to invest into the whole processing and value addition infrastructure. So, so therefore, as you can see, that we are trying to address the whole issue of the dairy sector development from a 360-degree point of view, and the driving the whole initiative in an entrepreneurship model rather than a poverty elevation model. So idea is that how do we manages the surpluses which are available to us rather than overcoming the shortages or handling the deficiencies as far as these issues are concerned. So all this, what's going to happen is that is not only we are going to be increasing the productivity and trying to match with the rest of the world in terms of the productivity increase, but also would be getting into the larger share of the world export market. In fact, the kind of produce and the kind of niche products which we have, we can easily become the world leader in terms of the dairy and dairy products provider of the world. And as we go along in the future, while a number of dairy companies are going bankrupt across the world, here is the future which lies in our country in view of the huge demand in terms of the growth potential, whether it is within the country in view of the per capita income increase, or per capita availability of dairy or milk products for the population of our country, which is much lower compared to the per capita consumption across the world. So that shows the whole potential of this sector as far as the investments in the 360-degree kind of development of the sector is concerned. So I would like to thank the organizer CII, and also congratulate Yes Bank once again to come out with a very relevant report at just the right time. So right time and right place is the word for the report which has been released today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. India has become a surplus milk producing country, so production, as I said, is not that much of a problem. Productivity is the area that we need to concentrate on, and sessions like these and other initiatives lately being taken up by the government are actually moving in the right direction on that front. Uh, I would like to thank all our panelists, our chief guest, Shri Atul Chaturvedi ji, for finding time amongst their busy schedules to address this session. Thank you, everyone. I would also like to thank all the delegates. I would like to thank CII. I would like to thank Yes Bank, British High Commission for partnering in this endeavor. Thank you, sir. I would also like to request the delegates to stay back. We will be starting with our next session within 5 minutes. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being with us during the inaugural session. I am now requesting Mr. Nitin Puri to begin the panel discussion one. Over to you, Mr. Puri, please.
Thank you, Kuldeep. Thank you so much. Once again, a hearty good morning to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, and a hello to all my esteemed co-panelists, Dr. Saeed, Dr. Margarison, Dr. Alam, Dr. Bosle, Dr. Samad. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning. I think we had a very good inaugural session with the entire perspective on the entire animal nutrition, health, genetics space being laid out very well. So this first session that we will have will actually draw from that. I think one or two very pertinent points which came up during the Honorable Secretary's address, as well as Dr. Minesh Shah and a couple of other dignitaries, was that while there is a lot of good technology when it comes to feed, fodder, silage, genetics, breed improvement, IVF, and the list goes on and on, one of the key elements is how do you ensure efficient delivery of all of this? Because it's good to have a product, it's good to have a technology, it's good to have a service, but unless it efficiently reaches the last mile, all the efforts actually go in vain. So I think that is one area where we will focus very actively on during our discussion in this panel. And the second, of course, we will of course talk about a lot of pieces around how to make further changes, what's the government doing, what are some of the initiatives so far, what are some of the improvement areas, etc., etc. And the context is pretty well known to you. Just as we said in the beginning in the inaugural session, while we are in India today close to an $85 billion economy as far as dairy sector goes, and the dairy nutrition industry, unfortunately, hasn't caught up with it. Considering the size of the opportunity, considering the size of the pie, and this indeed, as we said, was almost a fourth of the Indian agriculture sector, if you add up the entire animal husbandry, allied, and the core agriculture sectors. So considering the kind of size that this sector has, and considering the kind of touch points this has in terms of livelihoods, development in rural areas, creating opportunities for almost 70 to 80% of the rural population. Considering that, I think we've just touched the tip of the iceberg as well as all of these initiatives go. So let me start this by bringing in Dr. Saeed. Dr. Saeed, you of course have been doing a lot of work in this space. And Dr. Saeed, as in the dairy feed and nutrition space in India, you've been seeing this over the years as well. If you can start by just kicking off by sharing what you've seen in terms of the evolution over the last 2 decades. And if you in fact compare this with how maybe the poultry and the aqua sector has evolved, what are some of the differences? What are some of the learnings? Of course, the Indian spaces, the dairy space, feed and nutrition side is much more disaggregated compared to the consolidated space as we see in the other sectors. But do you see this as one of the key tenets? Do you see anything else as challenges, opportunities, and what possibly is the way forward when it comes to the feed and nutrition industry in India? Dr. Syed. I think you're on mute, Dr. Syed. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute.
And now we can hear you. Now we can. I think you've again muted yourself.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Nitin, for having me, and thanks to CII, really, and to my fellow panelists, Dr. Jean Margueriteson, Dr. Tanvir Alam, Dr. Dinesh Bhosle, and my teacher, Dr. Abdul Samad. So to address to your question, Nitin, if I look back a couple of decades ago, first we must consider that genetics and nutrition go hand in hand. Obviously, genetics have played a significant role and challenged nutrition over the last 2 decades. If I look back 20 years ago, for example, use of vitamins or trace minerals in dairy feed was considered as an optional. However, now the stakeholders, the nutritionists consider is as an obligation. And now what we are seeing that there is a continuous curiosity among the industry stakeholders, the nutritionists, to improve the performance of feed, to deliver the best on ground. In comparison to poultry and aqua, Nitin, what our analysis and feed surveys tell us, Alltech tries to put together global feed survey, a lot of robust data that goes in. More than 500 people are involved in putting together this survey, and it is acknowledged by different associations as well. When I look back at the numbers of 2012 to 2019, last year, calendar year, January to December, dairy compound feed per se in 2012 was about 5.8 million tons. To last year, it was 11.8 million. So it took us 7 years to exactly double the dairy feed with a growth of about 15% year on year. And we compare the same thing with poultry. In poultry, in 2012, our feed production was about 17.5 million tons. Last year, it was 24.5. So in 7 years, the growth in poultry feed as such has been around 6% year on year. And in case of aquaculture, in 2011, it was 1.1 million. Last year, it was 2.1 million tons. And the growth has been 13%. Now, when you look at the milk growth, we heard from the panelists in the inaugural session today, that has been 4% in initial decades to recently 6%. However, the compound feed is growing at about 15%. Now, is that enough? And what the future is going to look like? That is something we need to draw on map. I think the fodder availability and the quality of fodder is continuously going to be a challenge for India as we produce more milk. It is mesmerizing to see the silage making that is happening in different parts of the country. to the extent that the silage is getting commercial. And what we anticipate, Nitin, is more of TMR will be produced in the country. And we also try to do a couple of projects to see the feasibility of commercial TMR in Indian context. So coming back to the compound feed, Nitin, I think more than 70 million tons of raw material is fed as such. And that's the potential for the compound feed manufacturers to really look into that, other than the fish feed opportunity that exists, which is about 2 billion tons. So there's plethora of opportunities, Nitin, and the progression is happening very, very positively in the dairy.
Thank you, Dr. Said. Very well put indeed. And I think the opportunity in this space, as I would say, is actually the tip of the iceberg where we are as of now, and a long way to go indeed compared to the other two sectors that we're talking about. Of course, green fodder silage versus the entire compound feed story is the key theme, as we would say. That's critical as well. Thank you for that. Moving over to you, Dr. Alam, we will now just step 2 steps backward. If you look at the entire, the relevance and the importance of the dairy industry itself, Dr. Alam, given the entire human health, nutrition space as the opportunity, and with India being net protein deficit actually when it comes to the nutrition profile of a vast majority of the Indian population, what do you think is the entire story in terms of the criticality of the entire protein story in India, and what is the relevance within that of the dairy industry, whether you talk of the cooperative sector or the private sector? Dr. Alam.
Thanks a lot, Nitin. I think you raised a very important point. Let's look at it from the nutrient, and that could be a good time then to talk when that important risk for a nation is the repository of healthy people. And essentially speaking, we are a starch eater. We eat much more carb than protein, and that is the reason perhaps 70 to 80% of the people in India are protein deficient. It results into almost around 38% of the children stunted. These are the statistical context. When we talk about protein requirement, considering that we need roughly around 1 gram of protein on per kg body weight basis, India needs million metric ton of protein per year. Now, where from this protein is going to be coming? It's going to be coming from agriculture source. It's going to be coming from animal source. If we take entire agricultural produce of India, comprising of paddy, wheat, and pulses, put together, we produce around 15 million metric ton of protein. Now, balance 15, around 15 comes from the animal protein side. And what is interesting to note that milk alone contributes 25 protein which is produced in India. Now, that's a sizable quantity, and the quality also, because milk protein is of much better quality. So what I mean to say is that milk production plays a very important role in terms of fulfilling the nutritional requirement of India in general. Now, coming to the part of, as you're saying, when we looked at where from the milk is getting produced, we are seeing that almost 80% is coming from backyard or unorganized sector, and balance is coming from semi-unorganized sector. Interesting point is that the milk collection and aggregation, I'll call it, is growing rapidly in the organized sector. That's happening because the value chain wise is going up. Even in the disruption time, because of COVID, we observed that milk collection in the organized sector did not that much impacted, but it was our unorganized sector where it got impacted a lot because of primarily impact of HoReCa getting impacted, because that consumes almost 30-40% of milk in India, the sweet shop, tea shop. Going forward, I'll summarize it by saying only 3 areas which could be a focus area. Number 1, how do we make the farmers realize more of price at the farm gate? Because of late, we are observing that the gap between the realization price and the farm price, means the price at which the consumer is buying the milk and the realization to the farmer, is bit increasing. Now, that's one trend we'll have to observe. Then why it's happening, we need to mitigate, we need to reduce that as much, because as you also told, Nitin, 75% of the realization is by the farmer. But some places we are finding that the gap is increasing. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is that the consumption of milk and milk product and value-added product, how do we upkeep it? Consumer is asking more and more value-added product. A lot of good things is happening in this segment by virtue of digital and e-commerce, and I'm sure that this will contribute a lot in terms of last mile connectivity. And last point is that how do we take the milk production on the quality parameter? Because the moment we reach to that stage, world is our market. And at present, we do our exporting, but we are exporting only to a few countries, which may be called underdeveloped or developing countries. But many of the countries we are not able to export because of the quality parameters. Not that when I'm saying quality parameter, our milk is of poor quality, but there are certain standards which we have to meet. Meeting that, we'll be having a lot of opportunities. So these are some of the points, Nitin, from my side, and over to you. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Alam. So that's very pertinent indeed. The entire transition from the starch carbohydrate-based diet, predominantly vegetarian population. Of course, it's almost 50-50 now. To a balanced protein diet, and hence the importance and the criticality of this sector and the key points that you mentioned. Thank you so much. On this point, let me now bring in Dr. Margerisson. Doctor, you've been, of course, working outside of India, and you will, of course, give us a perspective from the other side of the table. And there has been a lot of discussion, Dr. Margerisson, right from the initial comments made by the dignitaries in the inaugural session, including the secretary, on the word efficiency, quote unquote. And when you talk of efficiency, I think one of the areas where you have been doing a lot of work yourself personally and as an institution is on the research and applications in the area of feed efficiency, which indirectly or directly also amounts to cost efficiency as well. And in some ways, this is hitting at the root of the entire discussion and debate and deliberation around how we become competitive, both in terms of cost as well as quality. So, Dr. Margerisson, from your point of view, with the experience that you have in the UK, what do you think of the feed efficiency itself as an area in terms of the criticality for farmers? What are some of your experiences? And how do you think people in India can perhaps learn from what you have been doing in the UK? Dr. Margerisson?
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Great, fabulous. Thank you very much for this invitation and to DTI for involving me in this. Well, in terms of feed conversion efficiency, clearly we were interested in that due to global food security and potentially trying to reduce the impact that dairy production has on the environment and to make it more sustainable. And clearly, because we work with farmers all the time, one of the most important things that was any economic efficiency and biological efficiency needed to be both considered, because farmers need to make economic decisions. This issue where the margin between how much milk production takes or costs and how much farmers are paid for milk has always been a problem for milk producers. And so you have to be incredibly efficient in order to make a margin. So on the basis of this research, we actually developed this research with the levy-funded body. So in essence, we applied to the levy-funded body where farmers pay a levy for this research. And then they're managed by a board of farmers. So very much right from the outset, the project itself was evaluated by farmers and voted on as to its application to farmers themselves. Followed by which we involved people from consultants, nutrition consultants and farm consultants from industry to decide how to structure this. And so it's very much an involved process to ensure that we're actually doing useful research and that factors or ways we can organise it will make sure that we can make it as useful as possible both to industry and to farmers. So these are really quite key components of research in the UK, which have not always been part of our research. And it's important that we are getting that uptake or utility of anything that we do. So if I get down to the main factors that we have found that affect feed efficiency, and I call it feed efficiency because it's how much feed is used to produce a litre of milk or a kilo of milk component. And so it is in that ratio. And first off, if we looked at individual cow feed efficiency, because obviously if we can have more feed efficient cows, we can get more milk production from the same food, so that's important. Then the main factor that increased feed efficiency was higher milk yield. Higher yielding cows were more feed efficient. So, you know, to have good high milk yields in cows that are appropriate to the nutrition available to them was a key factor. And finally, in terms of whole farm feed efficiency, in other words, if you took, you know, the unit or how much they could grow or how many hectares it took to grow that feed off-site to be brought on-site, we calculated that and looked at that. And the main thing really in terms of whole farm feed efficiency was how much milk you could produce per hectare. And so those were factors and efficiency factors that you needed to look at in order to achieve both economic efficiency, and there's a direct relationship between those biological efficiencies and economic efficiency for the farmers. So they were not the slightest, you know, divergent from each other. They were absolutely in a straight line relationship. So it's clear that we have both economic efficiency and biological efficiency. So if we actually looked in terms of dairy herd management to look at factors that affect feed conversion efficiency or feed efficiency, fertility was the main factor affecting feed efficiency. So not only did you have to have good milk yield, you need to have good fertility. And the number of days empty or you know, the calving interval, the more frequently animals calved annually, the more feed efficient they were. And so we were looking at the more non-lactating days or days during a low level of milk yield had a direct negative impact on that feed efficiency. And so you, as usual with a dairy cow, have to consider both milk yield and fertility. Now, and obviously looking at calving interval and number of cows calving, and of course remember to consider your empty rate, the cows that may not be pregnant, and leaving the herd, not to miss adding those into your calculation because they are a big cost. And the reason for that is your next biggest cost was actually age at first calving of dairy heifers. They are your second most costly issue on the farm, often neglected. I've worked in this area for many, many years because you're very much concentrating on nutrition for lactating animals and prioritizing them, and your heifers are clearly future milk production, so less of a focus. You can understand why farmers would potentially move feed resources towards lactating animals and that short-term financial gain, and possibly miss the fact that they're actually losing money or spending more money because heifers are being neglected. So that's right from, you know, the early calf stage, which is when we know we can positively impact on mammary development and future milk yield efficiency by having high levels of good nutrition. And yes, higher levels of milk feeding are what we are seeing is the only way to grow them quickly during that phase, and good supplements so that they can move through to being ruminants efficiently, effectively, and not to lose that growth rate and have no live weight loss when we wean them. So your heifer management is very, very important. It's very critical. And the main thing is to get, you know, to achieve that age at first calving as close to 24 months as possible. Because if you don't, then you've got more non-lactating days while they're eating but not lactating. And you're actually having to rear more replacements to achieve the same herd replacement rate. So you're also feeding more of them. So when you actually look at the extra days and the extra animals, it can be very, very feeding efficient, and you're not really getting any return from that because they're not lactating during this phase. And so that is a really huge area, which in fact can eclipse your actual lactating cow feed costs if you have health problems along with poor nutrition in these animals. So that was without a doubt one of the areas that is a key factor in management and economic efficiency. And really so it is important to make sure when you look at how many dry days cows have and how many heifers you've got, you're looking at those non-productive animals against how many cows are actually producing milk, having a huge impact on feed efficiency. So while there were many things we looked at, there really are the highlights and your main areas to concentrate on, because I want to keep it quite simple. In addition to that, as I described this research, when we're doing many types of research, both on innovation technologies, alternatives to antimicrobials, natural plant resources, milk and plant oligosaccharides, pre and probiotics, lots of different things to try and make sure we have healthy calves that have better immunity, so we have less disease issues, because we're finding there's a direct relationship between disease issues, inflammatory responses and fertility in heifers. So we need to make sure we have healthy animals in order to prevent any loss in growth rate, but also impact on subsequent fertility and age at first calving. So some quite important issues there. I think I'm just going to round up because I'm sure I've probably talked for long enough, and I don't want to take too much time. In the time I have been involved in research, which is over 30 years, and that sounds terrible to me, the change in which we are evaluating research and the way in which research is funding has changed immensely in the UK. And so what we now see is even high-level government funding, what we call BBSRC funding, which used to only be for blue sky or very innovative projects that may or may not be applied. The funding of that has changed because they were finding they weren't getting enough uptake. And so, in essence, all of this funding now is farmer need driven. You collaborate with commercial companies even to gain BBSRC funding. And on this project we were working with the Levy Board, they have a very strong arm in knowledge transfer. And so clearly, when it comes to the rating of our papers, which is also relatively new in the UK, we now have a star system, and the university wants more 4-star, higher star papers. So obviously more stars is better. And you can gain 4-star papers either by very scientific innovation, or in this case with this feed efficiency project that we have, while it's very industry driven, the impact it has on the industry and the uptake of it will change that paper from a 2-star to a 4-star paper. So the impact is seriously about impact and uptake. And clearly our research is constantly being disseminated through the knowledge transfer to all the UK dairy farmers who have contributed levy funding to that. So that's very much a very different shape to UK research, both the paper ratings and the actual applications for funding. So I hope that is helpful.
Sure, Dr. Margarison. Thank you so much. I think that's a very good words of advice for India from another part of the world basis your experience. Essentially, feed efficiency, cost efficiency, as you said, go hand in hand. Thank you so much for that and for highlighting some of your experiences. We will, of course, learn from many of them. Which brings me now to Dr. Bhosle. In fact, one of the things which Dr. Margarison also spoke in great detail was around this entire lactation cycle and the entire fat SMS story and the criticality of the 3-month 100-day cycle, the pre-post delivery kind of situation, and your views on this, of course, from the industry point of view, from your industry lens, and the other side of it is in terms of how to ensure all of this efficiently is rolled out to farmers by way of intervention around, and how to ensure that farmers actually adopt a lot of these practices. So what have been some of your experiences on this, and what would you have to share with us, Dr. Bhosle? Dr. Bhosle, over to you.
Yes.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. Are you able to listen to me?
Yes, yes. Intermittently, there is a problem with your signal, I think. So maybe you can speak. If not, maybe you can switch off your video.
Okay. Okay.
Sure.
So, thanks CII. Thanks Nitin for giving us opportunity to interact with the industry. After doing my PhD and working with industry, I always worked with farmers in last 23 years. I'm in direct contact with thousands of farmer, and I understood one thing, that farmer is scientist. We should understand this thing. He keeps doing new experiments in his farm, and then we can learn many things from farmer. And one thing what I learned from dairy farmers of India is that just like cricket match, 100 days are very important in lactation of cow. So 30 days before calving and 70 days after calving are very important for cow. Transition cow management before calving is very important to prevent metabolic diseases. Dry period, good care of cow should be taken to prevent diseases like mastitis, and farmer should learn to pay attention towards body score. Yeah, many things are assumed in Western countries, but in India, we have to teach farmer how to measure the weight of the animal, how to measure the diameter intake he should give. And nowadays, farmer has also started doing analysis of feed and fodder he is feeding to his animal. Fodder was most neglected part till 2005, but after 2005, farmers in Punjab, farmers in Maharashtra, Haryana, southern India, they have started paying attention towards a good quality fodder. And we always recommend farmers that they should prepare good quality maize silage, and they should give at least 15 to 20 kg silage to animal. They should also grow lucerne, berseem, ryegrass as a protein fodder, and they should give at least 10 to 15 kg to animal. And we are educating farmers that they should buy cattle feed on the basis of composition and not on the basis of price, because bypass protein, bypass fat, bypass amino acids are very essential for high yielding animals giving more than 6,000 liters of milk per lactation. And we are also educating farmers about calf rearing, which is a neglected part. And nowadays, I am happy to see that prominent feed manufacturers in India, they have started selling calf starter, milk replacer, grower feed, heifer feed, and many farmers are growing fodder by hydroponics. Farmers are also growing azola, which acts as a protein source. If you see poultry sector, why poultry sector become very organized in last 30 years? Because there was minimum intervention from government. So in dairy sector also, in coming decade, we want less intervention from government. Let farmer be allowed to choose what inputs he wants to, and he should be allowed to sell milk at what price he wants to sell. Because unless and until farmer earn money, he will not be motivated to use technology, whether it's a new technology or old technology. How to increase the fat and SNF in the milk, because he gets paid on the basis of fat and SNF in milk. So we have to educate farmer that he should buy animal of first or second lactation, because maximum milk he will get during third and fourth lactation. At that time, animal should be in his farm. We are also educating farmers to give 24-hour availability of water, because milk contains 85% water. I have seen that milk production has gone from 3 liters to 10 liters only by making water available 24/7. Mukta Sanchar Gotha is very important. We are promoting that concept also. Basically, total mixed ration is not a new word for Western countries, but in India, we will have to educate farmers about to feed total mixed ration. That will help rumen fermentation, because unless and until animal is doing 8 to 12 hours of rumen fermentation, acetic acid will not be produced and we will not get the desired milk production and milk fat percentage, and diseases like mastitis can be prevented. As my fellow panelist talked about age at first calving, it's very important. Intercalving period is also very important. And basically nowadays many startup companies are coming up. Farmer doesn't need to buy machineries, farmer doesn't need to buy even tractor. He can take all these equipments on rent. He can take equipment on rent to make silage, to do the baling of silage. I'm very happy to see that government of Maharashtra, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, they have put fodder policy on paper. So government incentives are very important to promote silage making, to promote hay making in farmer, and farmer is very eager to know. And good thing is that many youngsters dairy farming, whether they are son and daughters of farmer or they are from the urban area, after working in IT industry, real estate and other sectors for 10 to 15 years, people are turning towards dairy farming, which is a good thing. And many startup companies are coming up to sell the A1, A2 milk, hygienic milk, that will give better pricing. And I request government that they are giving NDP money only to milk cooperatives. They should pay attention to private dairies also. The funding should be given to private dairies also from the Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Fund, so that in coming 5 years we can improve the productivity of animals in India. Thank you.
Thanks. That was a very good statement that you made in between on the government making more of a catalytic supportive role rather than playing a role where markets get distorted. I think that is very valid indeed. And I think you also raised a very good point while you started with lactation and the entire story around the cycle. I think one very interesting point you made was on the silage solutions, and as to how there is some kind of an Uberization and some kind of a support also being given on popularizing this. In fact, Honorable Secretary also in his address mentioned that they are now starting with this hub and spoke model where they are going to come up with fodder banks. And there is indeed a lot of demand for this, and there is indeed a lot of opportunity in this. In fact, we also have a question from Suyash Bhal where he was asking that what are the kinds of incentives and supports being provided for silage. So I think to Suyash's question, which has come in the Q&A section, I think the secretary, honorable secretary, very aptly mentioned this, which Dr. Bhosle also mentioned, that there are indeed plans from the government to actually directly support, wherein part of the catalytic money will be provided by the government. And then, of course, the individual entrepreneur can set up some kind of a hub and then distribute this over the spokes with his own equity as well as some kind of financing support from the government. So I think it is these kind of innovative structures of delivering services to the last mile, I think, which are going to become increasingly more prominent. And a lot of startups, as you very rightly pointed out, are doing a great job on this front as well, apart from the existing larger companies. Thanks, Dr. Bhosle. Moving on to Dr. Samad, I think we'll continue with the same theme on the delivery of services. While a lot has been said about feed, fodder, nutrition, TMR, silage, but Dr. Samad, given your own experience, of course, you come from the academic world, but you've seen practical realities on ground as well very closely in your long career. What do you think are some of the key aspects when it comes to the productivity and the regulatory side of how a lot of this gets implemented? And how do you think delivery to farmers can actually become much more efficient with support from the government and from the industry? What have been some of your experiences, and how do we ensure and what can we learn in terms of how delivery of a lot of these product services actually happen more efficiently to the last mile? Dr. Samad.
Thanks very much, Nitin. I am extremely thankful to CII for giving the opportunity to interact. with the industry. Since I've been involved in research in as well as teaching, and I was also involved with the farmers going to their farms, picking up problems from there and trying to solve problems in the lab. So I'm going to start with few basic things which I think we should understand while accepting new technologies or whatever we would like to do. One basic thing which we should try to understand is that in India we have a system where culling is not possible. Okay, so therefore all our policies have to be such that we keep in mind that this farmer is not going to cull the animal, and that's why we require policies where animal will remain with the farmer for a longer period of time, and therefore all our technologies should revolve around that. Number two, that is basically related with keeping animals healthy and productive. Now, as far as health is concerned, I'm very happy that there are two national projects which have been recently launched by the government of India. Of course, they were there since last several years, but this has become a national program talking about foot and mouth disease, which is extremely important from both the point of view of the industry as well as from the point of view of the farmers. But the issue comes, when there is a micro planning. The government may be having a very good plan. The objectives are very good, but then the implementation is to be done by the state, and from state has to percolate to the district and to the lower level. And the basic problem starts, from there. The micro planning, with understanding of the ecosystem of the farmers. How we are going to take this plan, to the farmer's door. Is a big question mark. And for that, I'll give example of brucellosis. We have a brucellosis control program. Now, brucellosis control program under OIE, starts from a notification of an abortion. So in most of those countries, notifying every abortion is mandatory. We don't have that. And if we don't have abortion reporting system with us, then how are we going to start the brucella control program? Because the program would be you identify a farm where there is a positive case, and because this is highly contagious, even if there is one cow which is positive, it is going to spread infection to all the cows, and therefore you identify the problem there, and then you start calf vaccination. Now, calf foot vaccination is to be done between 4 to 8 months. So how are we going to identify that there are farmers in the villages having calves between 4 to 8 months? These questions which needs to be addressed by adopting a very novel approach. So one of the approach for brucellosis which I have suggested was that why not start a abortion insurance scheme, that we tell the farm, because unless farmer has an incentive of reporting, he is not going to report to you, and therefore if you have an insurance program, then if there is an abortion, he would inform for claiming the insurance, so that he keeps this animal for at least another 6-7 months. Otherwise, what happens, if a high yielding cow aborts, then usually it is culled and then it is not kept with the farmer. So at least he will be ready to keep that cow for a longer period of time, and then that information then can go to say the government agencies, so that they can come and investigate whether it is really brucellosis, and vaccination and other things can be done. So very novel mechanisms you'll have to find out to address the issues of health. Now, as far as productivity is concerned, our problem is most of the times our planning are based on assumptions and not on hard data and hard evidence, because there is no realistic real-time data is getting accumulated, that is not available. So it is left to the scientists or left to the policymakers to assume, and most of the time these assumptions are not correct. I have recently analyzed the census data. This census is available since last so many decades, but we have never really looked at the census data to understand what issues. And after analysis, I find that the census data speaks what farmers want. If you really analyze, you will be able to find out what farmers like, what are their problems. One of the problems which I have identified from the analysis of the census data is that we assume that farmers need a lot of heifers. That data is absolutely wrong. Now the data says in case of female, in first year you have around 40% of the females which are born. 40% is the composition as far as the proportion is concerned. You go beyond 1 year, between 1 to 3 years or 1 to 2.5 years, this becomes 50%. That means 50% of the calf after 1 year is being culled. It is not being kept. So the assumption that farmers need lot of heifers is not correct. Because the data says something different. Another thing which I have found that last 25 or 30 years there has been no improvement in fertility as far as the state level is concerned. I'm not talking individual farms or individual village. When I look at the data of say Maharashtra, Gujarat, UP, Karnataka, the animals that are milking has remained between 2 to 40%, and the of dry animals have remained between 18 to 20. The farmer has to support the income from this cow for others. So that's why focusing on this low hanging fruit like improving the fertility by nutrition, etc., is going to help us a lot.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Samant. That's great words of advice indeed. And as you rightly said on the FMD program and others, I think it's institutional innovations and innovative financial structures and products, I think, which will indeed make a lot of difference as well when it comes to better administrative outreach and better implementation of some of these technologies and products. Thanks so much. On this note, let me come to Dr. Syed now. Dr. Syed, you did allude to this when you were speaking in the beginning. Of course, you do a lot of work in the animal nutrition, health and feed space. But Dr. Syed, from your point of view, what have been some of your experiences as a company when you've been working with farmers, dealing with farmers, working with maybe the industry who provides some kind of a conduit for you to reach out to the farmers? What have been some of the developments, innovative approaches that you've seen, both from the cooperative and the private sector, when it comes to a better delivery of a lot of these things that we're talking of on this panel, and as to how these can reach out in a much more efficient way? Dr. Syed.
Yeah, Nitin, I think this morning session we heard, from the NDDB representative, Mr. Shah, about the deliverables and, what great efforts through daily cooperatives that they are doing. One thing I would like to mention here, Nitin, is on the ration balancing. The veterinarians, the technical staff are provided with all of those gadgets so that they could go onto farm and do the ration balancing with whatever feed and raw material is available at the farmer level, which is incredible to see. And besides this, we've already talked about progeny testing. The biogas plants are in place, which is incredible to see the reduction in greenhouse gases, and farmers are embracing all of these technologies. But what I see, Nitin, over the next decade or so, the dairy digitalization is going to improve quite significantly. We are able to see today GPS-enabled chips, being installed in millions of cows in a particular state, by which in real time you can identify the health condition and act promptly to correct that medical condition, if any. We are seeing a number of farm management softwares and systems being embraced by different stakeholders, which is incredible. At Alltech, we plan, to launch InTouch system. For example, this is a system which you connect to a TMR wagon, where it will automatically take the different ingredients, weigh and drop the ration to the animals. And in case if there is any discrepancy in picking those raw materials, then an alert goes to our call center, which is working extremely well in UK and in Ireland. That's something we would like to do and launch in India with probably, a good partner as well. So I think whether it is through VETs, we see agronomies as well, Nitin, where some private players have deployed to serve the farmers on the fodder management, for example, which is incredible. The extension workers, the pharma companies, the nutrition companies, the equipment companies, everyone is really on their job. The veterinary services are at the doorstep of the farm. I think the milk quality is one of the aspects where some of the private players are continuously focusing on, particularly on reduction or removal of those contaminants, if any. For example, the antibiotics or aflatoxin M1, and the farmers being incentivized. And this, I think, creates a great foundation for us eventually to export milk into foreign countries. So I would like to make a submission into CII platform, maybe to the Department of Animal Husbandry and Breeding, that the private sector has immense technologies and probably to give us an opportunity on a common platform to come and present those technologies, and then really for the government of India and the department to really take it on to those needy farmers, those technologies, and which are, I think, very, very fruitful.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Saeed. I think that's very opportune indeed. And the way the digital revolution has actually revolutionized, and the possibilities that are there for more efficient delivery of services. You talked about the tagging program. The government of India itself is doing a very large program. A couple of companies as well in the private sector are also doing a lot of these initiatives, because as you rightly said, unless they do that, it's going to be very difficult to monitor, very difficult to optimize, very difficult to administer any kind of inputs that you're providing, any kind of interventions that you're making. And unless that is done, unless efficiency comes in, unless cost goes down, and unless all your resources are optimally utilized, we will end up becoming a highly inefficient industry. And given the size that we are, we'd rather not go that way. Thanks so much. Dr. Alam, any words from you on this? Because you yourself have, of course, also been a great votary of digitalization and e-commerce, given your own global footprint as an organization as well, and the way you deal with your value chain, your network down to the last mile to the farmer as well, directly or indirectly. Any experiences from you, Dr. Alam, as to how creatively digital technologies, e-commerce technologies, and innovations can be more effectively used for reaching out to the last mile, Dr. Alam?
Yes, Nitin. Just to add to the point what Aman was saying, if we hear the voice of customer today, there is, other than fiber, protein is the one word with which the consumers of today are obsessed about. Good quality protein. So, and milk has all the reasons, in fact, to be called as a good source of good quality protein. What I'd like to say here is that I'll correlate it with, say, crude oil. The way we do the fractional distillation, and then we look at each component and we see the value of that component immensely in the industry. We need to look at milk not as a whole milk, but we need to look at it from that angle. It has got casein, it has got whey protein, it has got milk fat, and it has got many other components. So if we look at from that angle, we will see when we have built up the volume of 176 or 180 million metric ton of milk as a production, now it's a time, in fact, to get up on the value chain, find out the industry which is relevant to it, or build the industry which can help in terms of making the whole milk go up on the value chain. So I like to urge, in fact, industry to look at milk as a component, do the fractional distillation, and look at what is the potentiality of each fraction of it. That's it from my side, Nitin. Thank you.
Sure, Dr. Alam. Thank you so much. That almost brings us to the close of this session. We are running a little late, so we have to cut down about 10 minutes from our discussion. Thank you so much, Dr. Magarison, Dr. Saeed, Dr. Alam, Dr. Bhosle, Dr. Samat. I realized I'm the only non-doctor person on this panel. I'm the only misfit. Thank you so much for that. Anyway, I think it's been an interesting discussion, lots of learnings, lots of great work being done by the industry, lots of wonderful initiatives being taken by the government. And I think this entire space around nutrition, animal healthcare, is going to evolve very interestingly in the next couple of years. help us achieve a lot of the unachieved objectives which we were trying to maybe as part of the white revolution. In this version, we'll surely do that. Thank you so much. Before I hand over to CII, let me once again congratulate the entire industry, the government, the Honorable Secretary who was there with us in the beginning. I think some fantastic work being done by all stakeholders. And we look forward to creating another revolution in the years to come. Thank you so much. Please do stay on for the next session. Before I hand over to Kuldeep, we have another interesting session lined up specifically on the area of that's another very strong area where a lot of action has been happening in India, and that indeed also in some ways will bring in a lot of efficiency, including cost efficiency to this sector as well. Thank you so much. Back to you, CII. Back to you, Kuldeep. Kuldeep, back to you.
Hello.
A very good afternoon to all the panelists and the participants in this last session for the day. I would now request Mr. Sandeep Singh to please start the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all the people who are attending this session. I think we are here to discuss a very important topic which pretty much decides the future of food security in the form of dairy for this nation for the next decade. We'll be spending next hour in discussing how do we go about improving genetics to build climate and disease resilience and improve productivity in cattle. Now, why is this very relevant for a nation like ours? And why should we be discussing this? I'll just bring in some specific data points to drive home the point. One, as a nation, India produces the largest quantum of milk in the world. Now, we are number one primarily on account of the fact that we have the largest bovine population in the world. It's not a metric of our success in terms of productivity that we derive from these animals. At 1700 odd kgs per animal, we are potentially lower than global average of around 2400 kgs and far lower than what some of our developed countries have built, which is around 7000 to 10,000 kgs between European Union and United States of America. This particular stream of livestock is very critical as we believe in Godrej Agrovet, where we think livestock farming provides two very critical resilience factors to the Indian agriculture sector as a whole. One, it's a good income volatility proof against the usual primary source of income that farmers have. So as secondary source of income, and in some cases now this is moving as a primary source of income. We have done our own analysis in our organization where we've seen that in states where there is healthy livestock farming happening, the societal rate of farmers is much lower. So livestock farming is a way forward as far as Indian agriculture is concerned. Plus, it will play a very, very critical role in doubling the farm income for Indian farmers as was envisioned by our Prime Minister. Now, keeping these two things in mind, I think the next critical and most critical lever for us would be to look at how do we go about improving the genetic potential of the animals that we have so that we produce more and more with less and less animals, which helps us reduce our biological or natural footprint that we have in the country. At the same time, meet the additional requirement of milk and milk products that we will have as a nation. As we will consume more milk and milk in solid forms also. That is evident when we look at the sales growth of products like cheese, etc. So to meet these requirements, it's very critical that we solve for the productivity piece. Also because that is where the viability of livestock farming or cattle farming per se or dairy farming per se for the farmers will improve dramatically. To discuss the same with me today, I have an eminent set of panelists which would represent the entire spectrum of potentially the livestock industry in the country. From the government and academia, we have Dr. R.K. Vij. He's the Acting Director of National Bureau of Animal Genetics Resources. Professor A.K. Srivastava, ex-Director, National Dairy Research Institute, and now member of Agriculture Scientist Recruitment Board, Government of India. To bring in the private sector perspective, I have Mr. Arvind Gautam, Managing Director, Genus Breeding, and Mr. Rahul Gupta, who's General Manager at Chitle Dairy. And to take an outside-in perspective of what the rest of the world is doing, and seeing as the development of Indian livestock sector, we have Professor Jonathan Statham. He's Chief Executive RAT Solutions Limited and Professor of Sustainable Livestock Health Welfare, Harper Gill Vet School, United Kingdom. To begin the discussion, I would request Dr. Vij to throw some light on what he thinks are the different schemes that the government has launched, and how should the private sector and budding entrepreneurs within this space should look at some of these schemes. Dr. Vij, can you hear me?
Hello. Okay, I think you're potentially having some technical glitches. Then hello.
Yes, again. सेक्रेटरी साइड हमारा अप्रूवल आया है एग्रीमेंट ये वाला बस चेक करके चेयरमैन का होगा सी विजन आया है कि पर म्यूट करो वो NCIDF में ही तो था ना सर
Okay, I think while we solve the glitch part with that we are currently facing, Professor Srivastav is also on the call. So, sir, I'd like you to help us think through two pieces here. One, how do we make this sector interesting for young and talented to join this sector and create value? And second part is the way we see this growing is when we create more and more dairy entrepreneurs within the country. And what do you think should be the role played by future entrepreneurs in dairy and cattle breeding businesses?
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Okay, Sandeep ji, thank you very much. At the outset, my sincere appreciation and thanks to Mr. Kuldeep Tyagi and CII for organizing this panel discussion on a very important topic. Sandeep Singh, before I take the questions which are raised by you, I would like to add one thing that as you say that India is at #1 in the milk production in the world, it is mainly because of the largest livestock population. Majority of the people feel and they say like this, but I will correct that it is not a population-driven enhancement in milk production. I give an example. In 1951, the cattle population was 153, 155 million, and now it has come to 197 and 95 million like this. So what I want to say that from 1951 to 2019, from first census to last census, there was increase of 25% of the cattle population. Similarly, there was increase of the 153% of the buffalo population, but the increase in milk production was to the tune of 1,000 to 105%. So 23% increase in cattle, 150% increase in buffalo population has led 1,000 to 105% increase in milk production. It is not a number driven, it is a technology driven enhancement in milk production. So let us appreciate that technology has penetrated for enhancing the milk production. Absolutely correct. But yes, this is true that as we expected that technology will go technology will penetrate to the rural India, did not, but it is a technology driven enhancement in milk production. 50 years back, we were contributing, means only 1/3 of the US milk in world pool. And today we are contributing 2 times more than the US and 25 times more than the European country. That is the story that this is, yes, technology driven enhancement in milk production. Your first question that why our youngsters are not interested in the dairy sector. I would like to say that partially it is correct and partially it is not correct. In India, 75% dairy is being led by small farmer, marginal farmer, or landless farmer. 75%, which are they are having only 2 to 8 animals, right? So, but they are contributing maximum milk in the national pool, and it is more equitable. Dairy farming, small dairy farming is more equitable to the country. When we talk about the equity and all these things, example is that 75% of the small farmers are holding 73% of the dairy animals, but they are holding only 43% of the agricultural land. So it is more equitable. So coming to that, the youth are not interested to lead the small dairy farming. They are not interested to keep 1 animal, 2 animal, 3 animals, 4 animals and producing 5 liter per animal milk or 6 liter per animal milk. So in that way, you are correct that you are not interested. But second story, if you see, second part, that as far as commercial dairy is concerned, as far as large, moderate dairy is concerned, many educated youth, IIT graduates, many BTech, many dairy graduates, they have started their venture and they are succeeding very nicely. Here I would like to say that India is country which is having all 3 types of milk production system, animal rearing production system. No input, low output. They don't feed anything, still we get half kg, 1 kg of the milk. Moderate input, moderate output. Intensive input and high output. What I'm interested that I also don't want that our youth should be, educated youth should be engaged in small dairy farming, having 2 animals, 3 animals and contributing 10 liter, 5 liter of the milk. But yes, our youth are engaged, they are interested in moderate input, moderate output, or intensive input and intensive output system. So this is the real picture that our educated graduates, even engineers, IITians, they are interested in dairy and they are coming in a big way in that. But there is a need to boost the engagement of our educated youth to involve more and more in dairy sector. You are absolutely correct that there is a need, and that can be done by providing the incentive what Government of India is planning. Means when 15,000 crores rupees Government of India has announced for the infrastructure development of the dairy, then we all said that in addition to the processing plant renovation or in addition to establishing a new processing plant, let us spend some money for establishing the new dairying also for the production side. I tell you, Sandeepji, that it is difficult to produce the milk and it is easy to process the milk. So it is very difficult to produce the milk and that has to be given great emphasis. Second part of your question is, entrepreneurship. Yes, academia has to play major role in development of entrepreneurship. And there are many academic institutions. Since I led the National Dairy Research Institute for 10 years as a director and vice chancellor, we had established a very good technology business incubation and entrepreneurship development center in the institutes, where every year hundreds and hundreds good entrepreneurs, those who are established at the ground level, has been produced and they are doing good job. Through your medium, I would like to convey that what are the 3-4 most important area as far as genetics of the animal is concerned, where entrepreneurship should be given priority.
Sure.
And number 1, there is a shortage of elite bull. There is a shortage of good males. So one area will be that let the training be given, let the entrepreneurs should be developed so that they can rear good bulls from calf food to the good bulls and they can bring to the semen in the market. There is a shortage of male germplasm that we call as semen. If we want that all breedable population, either cattle or buffalo should be calving at least once in a year, then immediately we will be requiring 52 million additional dose of the semen. So that will be another area, Dr. Arvind Gautam can also add, that will be another area that entrepreneurship should be developed so that they can procure desired quantity as well as quality of the semen, so that our dream to have each and every breedable cow and buffalo, they should be calving at least once in a year. Sexing of the semen, sex semen, there are many private players in the field. Government has also taken the initiative, but I tell you the biggest training entrepreneurship is required, that how to inseminate the sexed semen. Today we are normal insemination with 20,000 million doses of the 20 million doses of the sperm. We are having conception rate only 35%. our AI coverage is only 30% in the country. Consumption rate is 35%. So we have to train, we have to develop the entrepreneurship so that we can get good consumption rate with administration of 2 million doses of the sperm in one dose of the frozen semen of the sex semen. Training required, means very intensive training is required to the inseminator. At present, we are facing the bigger problem that our inseminators are not trained. Instead of inseminating, they are inoculating a lot of bacteria and virus to the genitalia of females, which is causing reproductive disorders, metritis, endometritis, and all these things. So this will be one area, that training of the inseminator, rearing the calf, male calf to the bull level, and third one is, although it is not of the nutrition, but I tell you the entrepreneurship is required for the development of the silage, the technology which institute has developed, that how it can be translated under field condition to take care of the shortage of feed and fodder. Because if we see, there is always shortage of feed and fodder, either it is a dry fodder or it is a concentrate or it is a green fodder, it is all in shortage. Last one, in Gujarat, there is a good model of converting the dung into biogas. Even small farmers, those who are having 2 to 3 animals, they are implanting one machine which can convert the dung into the biogas, which can take care of the cooking gas, and as well as surplus can be supplied to some other place. So this is one area where entrepreneurship can be developed. Clean milk, last point, my last point, clean milk production. We do everything, we take all care once milk is collected and coming into the processing plant. But there is less effort, less emphasis is being given on clean milk production. For that, there are 2 models. One in Kerala, Kolar model, the milching machine is mounted on the cycle, on the bicycle, and the entrepreneurs moves from one house to another house, from one animal shed to another shed, and collect the milk without hand touching. So that is the one model. And another model, entrepreneurship can be developed by developing a cluster of 4 or 5 villages, and one milching machine can be fixed there, so that farmers can bring their animal and milching can be done without touch. So these are the few areas, Sandeep ji, where I wish that entrepreneurship can be developed, and there is a big role of the academia, big role of the institutions. Central government institution, NDRI, IVRI, and other institute, they are doing good as far as entrepreneurship development is concerned. But I wish that our all veterinary university, agriculture university should also take this entrepreneurship model in a bigger way. Thank you very much.
So much. Thank you, Professor Srivastava. I think we have Dr. Vij now online. So, Dr. Vij, I started the discussion with a slightly zoomed out view where it said that doubling the farm income, supporting livestock farming are critical roles as we proceed and build the next decade for livestock farming in this country. Keeping this in mind, if you could help us understand some of the priorities of the government in terms of genetic development and the different programs that have been launched, and how should private sector try to leverage and use some of these schemes for their benefit to build a more holistic ecosystem.
I think still there is a problem.
I think, can you hear me?
We can hear you now. We can hear you.
Okay. As Professor Srivastava just told you, all the farmers we are having and which are contributing to our milk pool are having only 2 to 3 animals, 4 animals. So that means it is not taken as an industry. So all farmers will be having 2 or 3 animals, and that creates a sort of a problem in terms of that all the farmers, because they are having individual animals, they are not sharing data from one another. And once we are talking about the genetics part and improvement related to the genetic component part, that means we will be requiring minimum the phenotypes. That means all the animals need to be recorded for their milk production. So that is one of the basic issues which was causing the improvement not to occur at a faster rate. Now, experimental part, of course, institutions like IVRE, NDRI, and Cattle Institute and Buffalo Institute were already carrying out some progeny testing programs that is taking 8 to 9 years for evaluation of bulls. Recently, and not very recently, we are talking in terms of 2010 onwards. We have newer technologies coming up, say like next generation sequencing. And we have large number of markers available with us. We also have a problem of not having any pedigree recorded for all the animals of India. We don't have the identification number. So we are to even pool the data. We don't have a identification of each animal. So we cannot maintain the pedigree, we cannot maintain the data. So these were the few issues. As far as things were far better for organized herds when it came to agriculture universities maintaining few animals and NDRI, IVRI and other research organization maintaining animals. But this is the academic part. But once it was being translated to the field condition, all the bulls were being selected on the basis of mother's milk. So we didn't have any other method of selecting the bulls. We never had. So, and progeny testing program, it is taking 8 to 9 years. So 9 years plus 2.5 years the bull's age. It was likely that when a bull is to be evaluated, the bull's age will be 11, 12 years. So, and the number of daughters that are being produced per sire is also usually very less, 8 to 10 or maximum 15 daughters per sire. While the minimum requirement for getting a good accuracy is approximately 100 daughters per sire. So we were also lacking there. In the year 2017, it happened that ICR, Indian Council of Agriculture Research, and Department of Animal Husbandry, they joined hands. And an NGO, the BIF, that Bharatiya Agro Industries Foundation. So all the three, the government research component and the implementing authorities, they joined together for the to circumvent the issue of data evaluation of high bulls with high genetic merit. So a program was envisaged under the name of National Bovine Genome Center. And two things that were required were for any selection program is the phenotypes and the genotypes. As far as the phenotypes are concerned, we have no choice but to record them at the farmers level because the number of animals, even national institutions like NDRE is holding is just 200, 300, maximum 500 animals. So IVRE will be still having less, and then species-specific institutes will also be having 200, 300, 500 animals. So the only way is to go to the field. And we had in Department of Animal Husbandry a scheme called Central Herd Registration Scheme. They were already recording some animals, both cattle and buffaloes, at Ajmer, at Rohtak, at Ahmedabad, and Angol. And then we have a NGO called BIF. They are recording in their respective areas. So, they are just recording, and the bulls are selected on the basis of mother's yield. And then there is Indian Council of Agriculture Research who are carrying out research in the form of QTLs and designing the chips. But they are of not much use because the amount of money that is required for translating it into the field condition was too huge. So, in 2018, Under Rashtriya Gokul Mission, National Bovine Genome Center has been established, which the center I am leading, in which the two priority areas were that we need to develop the DNA marker chips. That means we should have a high density chips for cattle, high density chip for buffaloes. Because buffaloes, India is the leader, and it is for the Indian country as India to develop and take a lead in buffaloes. So we were supposed to take a lead in buffaloes. What the genomic selection is in operation since 2012 in US and European Union and other countries. They have got a different species, Bos taurus. Our animals are Bos indicus. So whatever the chips they were designed for Bos taurus cannot be used for Indian condition. So we had to develop our own chips. And then once we got our funds in 2018, we started with the work of development of chips. So we are through with the development of chips for cattle as well as buffalo. So for Bos indicus, we have a high density chip. For Bos taurus, for Bubellus buballis also we have a high density chips. They are just available. And now we are going, then the second aspect is the genotypes. So we will use these chips for developing genotypes of those animals for the preparation of a database. Regarding the phenotypes, we have utilized the services of CHRS, Central Herd Registration Scheme for cattle and buffalo both. So, and then we have also utilized the infrastructure of Bharti Agro Industries Foundation. We have just recorded 14,000 animals. We are collecting the blood samples, so we are going to prepare a database which will be utilized for which we will be utilizing for development of prediction equations. So we can select the bulls right at birth, depending upon the prediction equations. So we'll have a database, and that database will be the property of the executing part. That means the bull selection part will be the component part of the animal husbandry department. And so we will be selecting, first criteria of the bulls will be on the basis of mother's milk yield, followed by genomic estimated breeding value of the animals, and only those animals which are on the top in terms of genetic merit will be selected and will be reared as high genetic merit bulls, for which semen will be collected and distributed. And to just for the information, these animals on which we are working at present are only the Bos indicus, that is the Gir, Sahiwal, Kankrej, Red Sindhi, those animals, and Rathi. So they are the indigenous breeds, because we have got 73% of the total cattle population belong to the indicus breeds, and our productivity is really low, is approximately 2.5 kgs. So for immediate genetic enhancement, the best thing is for the selection of high genetic merit bulls, followed by usage of artificial insemination and recording of data. So this is the aspects we are taking care of, and I hope that by June next, that means 2021 or so, we'll be in a position to start the selection of bulls once we have created the database. So with this is the newest technology available in the world. So people are shifting in the advanced countries also from progeny testing programs to evaluation of dairy bulls. So we are directly going to the evaluation of dairy bulls, because we actually really didn't have the data on which the selection of bulls or the pedigree records that were not available in India. So this is it will be likely to be a quantum jump. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Vish, for your point of view. I think I'd like to bring in Arvind at this stage. Arvind, we've heard Professor Srivastav mention that there is a huge potential in this nation when it comes to storage, first getting access to elite bulls and good males, and second, ensuring that farmers have enough more of doses available of semen. We have 52 million dose shortage or requirement indicated. You've been in this business for a while. You've been running this for ABS for now quite some time. So we want to understand from you, Arvind, in terms of where you think are the challenges residing currently, and considering you're working in an environment setup which is having operations across countries in the world, if we were to step back and uh, what are we doing right and what should we be working on to improve, that would be helpful.
Well, thanks, Sandeep. At the outset, thanks to CII and Fisheries for organizing this and having giving us. I guess there is some background noise. Yeah. So, am I not?
Can you request everyone else to be on mute, please?
Yeah. And am I audible, Sandeep, now? Yeah. So thanks. And, yes, taking that discussion, what Dr. Srivastava actually said, well, he started from 1951 and came down to this time where he said that it's technology driven. Yes, it is indeed, because we have come to about 30% artificial insemination coverage. However, there is a lot that needs to be done. He also said about how many shortages of semen or the male germplasm, which is right, because all these years we have been following on the quantitative, data, how many animals in AI, how many semen doses have been made, but we have not been able to actually speak on the qualitative terms. What kind of quality of semen that we are actually injecting. When he was saying that there is a shortage of male germplasm, yes, there is actually not a shortage of male germplasms, but there is a shortage of a quality male germplasm. So we have not been able to see what genes are we actually injecting. We just wanted to create more animals, more females, and bring into the more animals, bring into the ambit of the AI. But I think if you look in terms of genetics, because that's what we are saying, we are still selecting the male germplasm on the basis of the phenotype. And that's a big challenge. You go to any animal fair, you see so many males roaming around and champions and whatever. They talk about their build and how they look, but nobody actually says what kind of genes are there inside. So that's very important, and you will not be able to create an elite male germplasm unless you create an elite female germplasm as well, because that's 50% of contribution that's going to come from there. As Dr. Vij also said that the progeny testing takes long time, about 8 to 9 years. But I'll also add to this that there is no genuine progeny testing program that is possible in India, because we don't have any national milk recording system. If we do, at best we can check, whatever the progeny is, it's giving better than X herd or Y herd or Z herd. But there is no national data available. So we don't know how much is the national or first lactation daughters producing, say, for example, Sahiwal breed or the Indian Holstein or Jersey breed or whatever. So if we have that, then only we can say it is plus the national average or less than the national average. And once we do that, then probably, the progeny testing will make more sense. However, because it is a time consuming and the world moved to genomics in 2009-10, as Atul also referred, we at ABS actually moved to genomics in 2012. That was the first time we introduced the genomic bulls into India. And all of their daughters are now milking good amount of milk. Very recently, NDRI recorded the highest milk as well. But as Dr. Srivastava also said that we are recording only on the dam's milk, which is actually pre-1962 era of United States. So we're almost 60 years behind what US was doing. And in fact, at that time, they were doing dance milk plus daughter's milk. So I think we are even more, time, we've got a long distance to catch up. And when we brought in the genomics and got the high genetic merit embryos from outside, from US and Canada, and then we produced those bulls, we also produced those females because they also got, born there, and they were also very elite germplasm. So I think that's something which just needs to be done. We need to look at our breeding and our genetics as a quantum shift, moving from the numbers of insemination to, what kind of insemination. Unless the farmer is interested and, what his cow is pregnant too, we'll not be able to get that improvement. Yes, everybody needs cow pregnant, but more important is what it is pregnant too. As Honorable Secretary also discussed in the morning, that there are many initiatives that the government is taking in terms of IVF embryos, IVF technology, bringing the sex semen into the country, which we did for the first time in 2017, and now lakhs of daughters are on the ground. And then doing genomics, and Dr. Vij also spoke about doing genomic selection markers for some of the indigenous breeds. We're also working on the same lines. We're also working on the indigenous breeds, genomic marker selection in our own world, specifically Sahiwal, Gir, and Murra buffaloes. But we've seen how we can club these three technologies. I don't know how good or how quick we can take this IVF, transfers to the farmers, because it requires a certain amount of skill. It requires a certain amount of knowledge and acceptance and little higher cost. But I think we can definitely use the IVF embryos in order to produce very high elite male germplasm, which can actually further be disseminated through the AIs, and that we are already doing. So we have also taken a step further. We are now where ABS is presenting IVF sexed pregnancies at the farmer's doorstep. So if you need, you can call, and then that gets established, and it's paid only when there's a pregnancy. So all these technological interventions are coming, and it is helping. But just producing about 1,500 or 1,600 kgs, or in terms of indigenous 2.5 kg, per cow per day, which Dr. Vij referred. It is not economics. The farmer spends about a couple of ₹100 per day on an animal. If you look at the nutrition, food management, his own labor, everything put together, genetics is the smallest cost, maybe about 1%. But as Secretary said, that it impacts about 60-65%. So I think what we need to do is we need to produce more out of less number of animals. So unless we take that 2.5 kg, so we need to build in economics into our genetics, into our selection. Because if you ask me to have a cow and giving only 2-3 liters of milk, I'm actually spending money and I'm just investing without any returns. A poor farmer doesn't have such deep pockets. At the moment, he's not looking at, 70%, the smaller farmers are not looking at as a commercial dairy venture, but I think there are more and more dairy operators and dairy processors who are coming into the business, and someone like Godrej, who's looking at giving elite females. So what you're doing is you're giving that choice and that power in the hands of the farmers to produce more and be more economical. So that needs to be done. And we have also developed an India Dairy Index, like other genetic indices around the world, that has a lot of economic and parameters built in, right from the feed cost to replacement cost of the cows as well. So that gives him enough power not only to choose what kind of traits he wants interested in with the genomics, conformation, health, fertility, and it also gives him the ability to produce more females through sex semen and the IVF embryos. One interesting thing which Dr. Srivastava also mentioned is a challenge on the clean milk production. Somehow that is also can be addressed partly by the genetics. So if you choose genetics which have low somatic cell score count, You have, more health traits, infertility traits. You can choose genetics which help in better transition diseases, right? You can have better transition. There's a lot of work that Zeotis is also doing in the transition products, apart from the transition genetics that ABS is doing. So I think there's a huge need to look at it in an entirely different, direction now, and take this breeding into a very, very different direction. Use all the technologies put together, but then put more emphasis on making more economic-driven breeding choices and breeding programs, so that it makes farmers to be far more interested. Sorry to say, we as the implementers and many as the policymakers are not linking those economics of the farming, and we're still experimenting at the cost of the farmer. So if they're asking somebody who is producing 40 liters of a cow to inseminate and go ahead with an indigenous cow of 2.5 liters, I think that's pretty unfair on him. The idea is, as Dr. Vij is working and he's developed that, and to take those genomic markers up to selection for the genetic breed of the indigenous, cattle, and then actually take that to the masses and say that, okay, now you have a 10 liter, 15 liter, indigenous cow there. So if we do that, then probably we'll be helping a lot of farmers. And we, as a private player, are engaged for the last 10 years in India, producing this and working at the forefront of the genetics. Because when I came in 2012, nobody in India spoke about genomics. I'm very happy to hear a lot of people now talking about genomics and how can we fast the genetic gain. And we were only talking about the genetic equation there, but now I'm very glad to know that there are more people talking. Such a huge country, so much big population. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 players are not sufficient. We'll all have to come together, create as many people working in order to improve the breeding. The better. And the dairy processors will play an important role here. And I think Atul will also shed some light there, because how they are basically connecting blocks to their farmers on the ground and the customers and the production, the productivity, on the other hand. I think there are many processors like Chitle Dairy, represented by Rahul here and others, who have brought this. They have taken it to their milk shed area, disseminated that genetics to their animals, connected them with the newest and best of the technologies, and reaping that benefit. I think a lot of dairy processors will also be able to contribute in this.
So thanks, Arvind, for your very candid inputs on this particular sector. Of course, there is a clear direction of thinking that comes from the academy, and somebody who's practicing this day in and day out will have a different perspective. I think the critical element that you brought out, that economics for the dairy farmer is supreme importance here. As long as he or she does not see value in what is being done, the reason for them to pursue this and take this very seriously automatically tends
right.
to
Sandeep, if I can add one line, is that we need to focus on the genes rather than the number of straws. So the way we start speaking about what are the genes that the straw is carrying, I think things will change much faster.
Good. Yeah. So thank you so much, Arvind, to bring that perspective. I think at this stage, Jonathan, if you can chip in, you've heard two different worldviews now. One which comes with the way we want to operate, and another is coming from the farmer's point of view, right? So what do you think should be our immediate focus area as a country, where we can hope to improve this or take this ramp up of productivity quite quickly? And how should we go about building this capability, considering we've had challenges around the same to take it to the last mile connectivity? And where do you think, how can we sell this effectiveness of the science to the farmers so that it makes more sense for the person who's actually paying for all of this, potentially?
Thank you, Sandeep. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. And I just want to say thank you to Kuldeep, obviously, and CII for the invitation. I'm very pleased to be involved in today's event, and it's It's great to share some of the challenges, which I think we all face. And again, I think some of the discussions so far are familiar to me. And I think to pick up Sandeep's question, and I think this follows on very much, from Arvin's discussion, that trying to actually make a difference at farm level is the key. Genetics and genomics are essentially a promise. And I think one of the key discussions that we have is how to make that genetic potential a phenotypic reality on farm. And so I think, how we build that capability and how we actually therefore cross the barriers to make that happen, I think it's really, in my view, whether this is British farmers or Indian farmers, is how can we make things easy enough to do and cost effective enough to do for farmers so that they're willing to do it. And I think, Arvin talked again about, the cost aspects of this. And certainly, my experience has been, and the work that we've done is very much about, we can't expect farmers to spend money they don't have when they can't see a return for that. So I think to answer the question, this for me, I think, is all about how do we remove the barriers to getting the progress that we have within the genetic potential. So I think a couple of key points. I think to grow that capability, I think one thing is making technology accessible and available. And by technology, I mean AI, I mean ET, using IVF embryos going forwards as well. But actually getting AI onto farm and onto more farms, but also it being done well. So I think the first thing is access to technologies that make that easier, ways to transport semen more easily, to improve the quality of semen and make it easier and more resilient to transport and storage challenges. So technology in lots of ways that improve the success of AI. But also the other half of this in improving that capability, one is the access to technologies at a reasonable cost. The other is training and education. And I've been very involved in training. I run AI courses nationally in the UK. I've personally trained literally over 1,000 farmers to AI personally in the last sort of 10 years, and I train trainers. So education is a key part to cascade out actually the benefits of that. So I think a big part of growing that capability is, can we make technologies accessible, workable, and not too expensive? And also, can we find ways to cascade education and training and skill out there to remove the barriers? So I think they're really important. And maybe to link this together is, I think, the idea of herd health. There's been conversations about recording, about progeny testing, about records. But I think also there's a discussion here about waste and about success. What are the factors that limit genetic improvement? Well, we see huge issues still with disease. There's nothing more frustrating than actually that genetic potential doesn't happen because we've got high levels of disease on a farm. Cows which actually have got an infectious disease won't get pregnant. So I think trying to understand how to control disease, that's everything from mastitis through to infections of the uterus as well as other infectious diseases. So I think health is really, really key. Is nutrition a limiting factor? we can move all of the AI semen in the world, but actually if we don't have good nutrition, we won't get that phenotypic improvement because we won't get the pregnancies on the ground. I think all round trying to look at a structure of herd health. How can we get out to those smaller dairies that Sandeep talked about at the start in terms of how do we go to the smaller dairies? So I think a really important part of this is to try and look at how national structures can become regional structures, can become local structures that get to the farm. We were involved, for example, in a scheme called Farm Skills, which was about trying to get things like AI training into very small, easy to deliver training ideas, where we had a national scheme where we trained a group of regional trainers. So we had kind of like an elite team of champions, and then within their regions, they trained other people to do AI. And then within their local areas and within cooperative groups, they train people. And in those AI training courses, they also talked about health and disease. And they do talk about genomics and quality at the same time. So it's creating a cascade that goes from a national program to regional programs to local programs to farms that wouldn't normally be involved in training or education at all. And your AI centres and that network could be a really strong way to do that. So building capacity, I think, and capability is about looking at that kind of cascade structure too. I think part of that perhaps is records. It's so difficult to demonstrate progress and persuade farmers that it's worthwhile if we have nothing to prove it. And although this is again very difficult, in the last 15 years in the UK, we've seen very poor levels of recording increase over a long period of time, over more than 10 years. But it's accelerated in the past 5 years, and now 95% of all dairy farms in the UK have to have records. And for their milk to be sold, for their milk to be drunk, they have to have records, and they have to have an audit, which is both about hygiene, but it's also about the information needed to prove that actually high quality genetics make a difference. We can show that the good bulls are producing more milk on farms. And it started off very small. It started off with, it might just be how many buckets of milk. It might be just literally, how very, very low levels, but it builds up, over time to the information that we need. So the herd health concept is measure what's going on, then you can see where to make a management change, and then finally you can then monitor whether things are improving. So I think maybe also, Sandeep, just to kind of look at the other question of how we increase that capability, and I think it maybe comes back to the professor's first discussions about entrepreneurship as well. But I think it's important that we inspire new high quality people to come into our dairy industries, as well as educating the existing people. And it's so important that we can produce the food that we all need and create an economic solution so that it's good business, so that we can see that the changes we make improve the economic situation for farmers. But also by doing this, these good health and good genetics changes, they also reduce greenhouse gas impacts. And internationally, our industry is under pressure in terms of looking at climate change resilience. And actually, there's a big focus on nutrition and a big focus on manure management. But actually, greenhouse gas production from the dairy industry is largely about waste, about reproduction, about health, about efficient milk production. And I spoke at the climate change conference in December in Madrid at the COP25 conference, because we've been involved with some global research showing how improved reproductive performance, so good AI, using genetics and genomic improvement, but also improved health, massively reduces the impact on the environment. So we produce food that we need, we have less waste, we have less impact on the environment, but also a good economic return for farmers. So I'll maybe draw things to a close, Sandeep, because I'm conscious of time, but I think I'd maybe summarize by saying, how can we identify what the limiting factors are right down to farm level? And when we have the best genetics being out there, then we have to make sure that the environment allows those genetics to be expressed. And a team effort, I think, is going to be the key to that improvement. Thank you.
That's quite helpful, John. I think the fact that you mentioned that there should be a cascade that needs to be built in, where you take national level programs to the last person in the value chain who actually gets impacted by it the most. That will be very critical. And at the end of the day, we need to attract better talent, because while by sheer nature of the business, genetics is in a way answer to what sustainability challenges the industry faces. Potentially we need a better set of people to come into the business and implement some of these things to ensure we actually make it happen and make it count. So I think quite helpful there. I think I'll request Rahul now, who's actually the practicing person here, by building a business which is across the entire value chain, right? I think Chitle Dairy doesn't need much introduction here. They have their own farms, and from there, obviously, to the entire value chain of creating the right products for the consumer. So Rahul, I think a couple of things that I want to understand is, what is your takeaway from this entire integrated business model that you've built, and what role do you think genetics played in this? And the second part is, of course, since you understand the entire ecosystem and value chain so well, from a cost perspective, where do you think there is room for us to be more farmer friendly?
Sure, Sandeep. I'm audible?
Yes, you're audible, Rahul.
Thanks, Sandeep, and a big thank you to Kuldeep and CII for organizing this and giving me this opportunity. Good afternoon to all of you. So yes, the question is very, very pertinent. We definitely are seeing that a lot of integration, is now happening in the dairy industry, and it has specifically picked up in the last, I would say, 10 years. This has mainly been actually catalyzed by the entry of large-scale private milk aggregators, which are coming from within India as well as outside India. But I would say that I have seen a lot of entrepreneurship as well, wherein business groups, wherein entrepreneurs within India, they are also taking mechanized and organized dairy farming in a big way. So I think that it is a big welcome trend for the industry. What is the flip side is that in some of the cases, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the line, the target they set in terms of generating profits and in terms of generating revenue out of that major investment, that actually loses somewhere down the line. So that is something which has to be addressed. And one of the common factors which I have felt why it is not happening is actually because they are not using the level of genetics they should have for specifically for organic farming. Now, as Dr. Srivastava has already shared, most of the animals are being reared in India in backyards, with about 75% of holdings between 2 to 8 animals. One of the other reason is that this backyard is, slowly dwindling and losing because the land has become expensive and the resources are more expensive. Disposal of manure has, another big challenge in certain areas, specifically in the urban areas. And this has prompted a lot of people to consolidate and actually integrate it into a major big dairy farm. Now, definitely this integration of dairy farming, this plays a huge role in genetic improvement, because I feel that a lot of prerequisites for genetic improvement are very well aligned when you integrate dairy farming activities. First and foremost, you see across the board, throughout India, the major problem is the data management, and I would say even proper identification of the animal, of the cows, is not existing. So it starts from there, where the animal is properly identified and the properly managed, so that we know at the end of the day whether we are making profit or losses. Then, as Dr. Gautam has already shared, and some of the experts have already shared, it has a big impact on the quality of milk. There are already different processors who are purchasing milk based on quality in terms of somatic cell score, in terms of other heavy minerals, pesticide levels. So things like milk, I think they would grow in the future, and this integration and commercialization would help in actually achieving clean milk production goal. Then again, there is a problem of much labor. We have working in the dairy industry since the last several years, and we have found that the animal or the dairy farm has to be managed on a 24/7 basis, 365 days in a year, and labor that plays as a major role. So shortage of labor in any condition, that proves havoc to dairy farming. And definitely mechanization is something which helps, and integration is something which helps in mechanization of the farm and get rid of the requirement of that much volume of labor. In our terms, when we talk about how reproductive management is to be seen, then definitely it gives way for better stress detection and ultimately resulting into better conception rate. The feeding of a balanced nutritious diet again comes up with these integrated solutions. As far as Chitle Dairy is concerned, we definitely have taken multiple initiatives in the last several years, and this is definitely how to improve our farmers or the milk shed of about 200 kilometers wherein milk is being procured. It is actually a huge network of close to about 200,000 animals, about 10,000 dairy farmers from where the milk is being purchased. And when we started, I think the major upgradation program somewhere about 10 years back, the major challenge, which is still a challenge, is that we have a huge transportation cost. There is a huge transportation cost involved in collecting all those, liters of milk and ultimately bringing it to the dairy processing plant. And again, there is a huge transporting cost in all of the services. And this cost of petrol and diesel are rising by the day. So the only alternative in 2010, 2012 was how to increase or collect more milk from a lesser area. And I think that is when we partnered with ABS as our channel partners, and we worked the plan around genetics. And it was genetics not just in Holstein or Jersey, but it was also genetics primarily in buffalo, because we are procuring more or less about close to 60% milk from buffalo for the value-added products. So it was a major initiative taken in buffalo genetics as well, in cattle genetics as well. And now we have almost doubled the milk procurement in the last 8 years. And we are, pleased to share that that is coming from a smaller area. So that means the cost of transportation has reduced a lot. So that is one thing which was taken care. Again, we always valued that data, and the analysis of the data is very important. And it is not just for us, it is for all the farmers who are working with us, who are pouring milk with us, and it is very important for them. So we launched something in 2006 which was known as a cows to cloud program. And this is just a SMS message service back then, wherein all the animals under the milk shed, they were RFID tagged. And so that just by getting near to the animal by the transponder, we can get all the data, and then this information is integrated into a central control room, and the farmer gets regular messages in terms of when the pregnancy check is due, when the insemination is due, and when and it was later strengthened for all of the services. So I think this has worked very well. Now, because this RFID tag and the transponder is expensive, so we have now moved over to a QR code based tag, a polyurethane tag, which is just tag. And anyone can just have an Android phone, just scan the QR code, and the data is readily available with the complete history of that animal. So even if that particular cow or buffalo changes hands, the data still remains intact. The only thing which changes is the name of the owner. The identity of the animal, and its entire reproductive data, its entire production data is there for everyone to see. So even after the animal is sold, the data cannot be faked. That is another, trust building which has happened in the dairy fraternity due to this initiative. Then again, I would give you a small example to you what we have done in the last 10 years, specifically in Buffalo, and I think dairy farmers would more relate to that. So about 10 years back, we saw that we have to have a major improvement in Buffalo, and even now we don't have anything Buffalo genomics in genomics in Buffalo. So what we did was we selected just two basic traits in Buffalo, which were creating a huge issue. And those were, apoptosis. That means buffaloes actually dried up pretty soon. So in 200 days, 240 days, rather than, 300 days, so a smaller lactation period. And then we are having a problem with the milk letdown. So we selected just these two traits. We identified the best of the buffaloes in the herd who didn't have any problem with the milk letdown. So similarly, we also identified buffaloes whose lactation period was more. What we did was, as some of the panelists also shared, Dr. Samad shared, that we cannot cull, but we can select. So what we did was we selected only those buffaloes who have both these traits very good. So selected buffaloes which are good on milk letdown. We selected buffaloes who completed their lactation period. Then we also made sure that the elite male calves and the eligible male calves produced out of these female buffaloes were reared very well, and then put into semen production. So now I'm very pleased to say that Chitle, dairy farm is amongst the very few in India where 100% buffaloes are now machine milked. And the same now we are taking to the farmers. So this definitely, addresses a lot of issue towards mechanization of buffalo farms, which is very, very important for India and the farmer fraternity as a whole. So I think, these initiatives, they are good enough, which can be taken to, even outside Maharashtra, I would say to the entire country. This is not a rocket science. This is just pure selection, and selection essentially for breeding. As Dr. Gautam has said, our goal from day one is not to just get the cow or buffalo pregnant. The goal is to make sure that ultimately the female calf born should be producing more than its mother. If it is not happening, it is not genetics. It is just we are, just impregnating a cow or buffalo, and I think that can also be done by any stray bull. So the entire purpose of genetics is defeated, and that is that is something which I think we all should propagate. And another thing which I, as a reproductive biologist, I get really pissed off. Recently, I came across a straw which doesn't have any sperm inside it. It has just some fluid, but no straw. So it is high time. I think it is not about the volume, it is about the quality. It is very rightly said, it is about the quality of genetics which is being imparted to the farmer, and ultimately the farmer is being deceived, because whosoever sold the straw has got his money and he's just run away. But the farmer has been deceived. There is absolutely no pregnancy to happen. And I would say that the counterfeiting of semen is something which is to be addressed in a big way. Bovine Breeding Act has to be implemented in all the states as soon as possible.
So now just this is potentially the wow moment. I think. Do you have anything else to say, Rahul?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So I think, unfortunately, we are way behind our stipulated time limits, which kind of restricts us from answering some of the questions that has been posed to the panelists. So I'd request the CII team to help us with the questions so that it can be replied by email by the panelists in due course. If I were to sum up, I think we've just seen the entire spectrum of what needs to be done. It's a huge opportunity. A huge opportunity when somebody quantifies and says it is 52 million doses, as Professor Srivastava was putting the number. Arvind gave a very different lens to the whole thing, saying it doesn't matter. As long as you keep on only talking about numbers, we are not heading in the right direction. You need to start questioning yourself and asking what's going in that straw and what kind of genes are we building in the entire in the herd pool of the nation. And then Rahul took it to the next level when he said, listen guys, all of this is important. Depth matters. You can concentrate and shrink your region and still get double the quantum of milk from a smaller region. Entrepreneurship potentially has role across the entire value chain, starting from the breeding programs to running a dairy ecosystem where, you know, on a smaller concentrated level, you're procuring more and more milk, thereby reducing the cost of procurement and being more and more viable as you go towards the front end of the value chain. So I think, and all of this can happen only if obviously you're getting the right set of gene pool in your herds and in the ecosystem that you've built around your procurement network. So by and large, I think this is the direction we need to take, and I mean, this is where the directional sense is, and this is what we should be focusing on. Genetics will be the future of how the dairy procurement network builds over a period of time. Spreading ourselves too thin with the cost that we end up incurring will make dairy companies and the front-end companies a challenging case for viability. And hence we need to go deep. And when we go deep, we need cascaded structures. We need better talent pool. And that's what will help us solve for the challenges we have. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, all of you, for your time. I'm sorry we've absolutely overshot the time limit awarded to us. To all the participants, your questions potentially we will be answering through emails over a period of time. Stay safe. These are unusual times, and hopefully we will see you across the hump when we meet in person. Thank you, all of you.
Thanks, Sandeep.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks, Sandeep.
Thank you. Bye.